Chapter 126, Unlocking Potential. Seeing Nail's unfriendly expression, Xiaya said with a faint smile, "We know that Great Elder rests here, and we have come here precisely to pay a visit to Great Elder. Please go and inform him." His tone was very polite, but his words were also filled with self-confidence. He tried to be courteous as much as possible, and then only looked for the other person's response. However, according to Xiaya's understanding of Nail's personality, he would most likely refuse them to visit. Sure enough, Nail gave a quick glance to Xiaya and shook his head, saying, "Great Elder is old and will not see you. You should go back." Since planet Namek experienced the extreme changes in climate, ancient Namekians had all become extinct. Great Elder was the only ancient Namekian who had survived the climate cataclysm. Currently, every Namekian on planet Namek was birthed by him. For Nail, Great Elder was like a father character. As the bodyguard of Great Elder, Nail does not want outsiders to disturb the Great Elder's resting time. "I think you should go and inform him. Maybe Great Elder would be willing to meet us." Xiaya faintly smiled, again saying. He knows that Nail would not let them go meet Great Elder since he was afraid of them disturbing his rest. So, he did not get angry. After hearing Xiaya's words, Nail frowned. He does not like such annoying people. Even though he had told them to go back, they are still not going. His expression couldn't help but turn cold. Just as he was about to refuse again, the Great Elder's aged voice traveled out from the building, "Nail, let them come." Hearing Great Elder's instructions, Nail froze, clearly somewhat surprised. However, for him, Great Elder's order was the highest order. So, he gave Xiaya and others a glance, and said in an indifferent tone, "You come with me, but Great Elder needs to rest. If you have something to ask, do it quickly. Don't disturb Great Elder's rest." After finished speaking, he turned around and headed towards Great Elder's residence. Xiaya and others glanced at each other and followed up. Great Elder's residence was a huge two-story building with a very strange appearance, like the skeleton of a dragon. Looking from far away, it looked like a huge dragon's head lying prone with mouth open on the ground. This may have originated because ancient Namekian worshipped dragons. Kami from Earth has a spaceship which also has a similar style. Walking into the huge building and arriving at the second floor, the Great Elder's old and enormous body leaning against a stone chair could be seen. As his body was excessively big, even moving was very difficult. This is Planet Namek's Great Elder, creator of Planet Namek's Dragon Balls. Looking at the old and enormous Namekian lying on the stone chair, Xiaya's heart was like a mirror. The Great Elder's enormous body was indeed very shocking. Legend has it that Great Elder was the only ancient Namekian on planet Namek who had survived the climate shift in ancient times. Hundreds of years' time had caused his body to be permeated with vicissitudes of life. Now, he was gradually getting old. "Young King of Scions, for what reason have you come to planet Namek?" Great Elder raised his eyelids, his aged voice sounding somewhat weak. Listening to the faint sound would definitely give people the illusion that the speaker was like an oil lamp which had reached the point of drying. Because of this, Xiling and Myers could not help but wonder if this Great Elder could really help them improve their battle power. However, Xiaya, who was familiar with the development of the original work, knows that Great Elder's ability was naturally unquestionable, and he still has more than 2 decades of lifespan. On the side, the loyal bodyguard Nail looked at Xiaya and others, somewhat surprised. He really didn't expect that this person before him who brought him a real deterrence would actually be the King of Scions. He was unexpectedly so young. Of course, as Great Elder similarly have a prediction ability, Nail also didn't think much, and continue to act as a qualified bodyguard. There is a rumor that Great Elder has a special ability to unlock the potential of a person's body. We have come here to increase our strength. I hope that Great Elder can help us. Xiaya looked calm, and his body was filled with calmness and indifference of a leader. As he was similarly the leader of a race and was of similar status, Xiaya was qualified to talk to Planet Namek's Great Elder as an equal. "Oh, you know that I have such an ability. I can feel the righteous power in your body. As this is different from the former Scions, I can accept your request." Great Elder slightly nodded. It seems that eliminating sins from their body was really effective. It, at least, let Great Elder believe that they were righteous people. Xiaya revealed a bright smile. On the side, Xiling and Myers also had a happy expression on their face. "Wait a minute, Great Elder, you are already getting very old. If you casually use your power, it will consume a lot of physical strength. Seeing that Great Elder promised without hesitation, Nail hurriedly tried to stop with a worried look on his face. As Great Elder was already getting old, even moving casually was not possible. He fears that if Great Elder uses his magic, it would deplete his body's strength, thus affecting Great Elder's lifespan. Rest assured, unlocking people's potential is my special ability, it does not consume physical strength, my body can still preserve for several decades. Great Elder shook his head and laughed. Nail wanted to say something but hesitated, and finally complied with Great Elder's words, retreating to the side. Who will go first? Great Elder looked at Xiaya, Xiling, and Myers before kindly asking. Let me go first. Saying, Xiaya moved forward and arrived before Great Elder. Great Elder nodded his head with a smile and extended his huge arm. His palm was placed on Xiaya's head, almost covering his entire head. Oh! Astonishment flashed through Great Elder's face, and then he closed his eyes and concentrated. Saiyan King, I can feel that your body has unfathomable potential, and there is also some magical energy, like space-time power. Oh, let me see how much potential can be unlocked. Speaking this, he unleashed his magic and waited for Xiaya's potential to get unlocked. Shua! A golden light rose from the ground and immediately a bizarre magic acted on his body. Xiaya could feel that there was an immense heat flow gushing out from his body, quickly spreading throughout his body. Each cell of his was brimming with vitality as if it was injected with chicken blood, his whole body felt comfortable and refreshed. After Great Elder has unlocked his potential, Xiaya's ki began to rise, and suddenly a majestic and boundless aura erupted out from nowhere and surrounded his body before it begins to rage and burn. Xiaya was wrapped in golden blazing ki and his strength kept rising. 270,000. 330,000. 380,000. Xiaya's ki kept increasing, as his potential was released due to Great Elder's unlocking potential skill. At this moment, Xiling and Myers, who were standing on the side, suddenly had their complexion change. They were all awed by the enormous energy emitted by Xiaya, and at the same time, their eyes turned scorching hot. While the young Nameki and Nail revealed a shocked expression. 450,000. 640,000. Xiaya's strength was still increasing, and finally. Huo! The enormous flame suddenly expanded, and as the ki flame seethed and burned, a vast and mighty aura burst into the sky. 720,000. Finally, his power settled on 720,000 battle power. The clouds around the entire planet Namek were suddenly scattered by this aura. The thick floating clouds dispersed all at once, and taking the area of Great Elder's residence as the center, abnormal phenomena kept appearing in the atmosphere and sky, while the rosy clouds began to spin, forming layer after layers of concentric cyclones. It was as if planet Namek was once again experiencing a climate change. Such a frightening potential, I only unlocked a small part of it, but it is unexpectedly so frighteningly powerful. It seems that the Saiyan race will really rise in his hands. Great Elder's face revealed a shocked expression on his face, his twinkling eyes looking at it still in a drunken stupor from power Xiaya. Besides them, Nail, Xiling, and Myers were long ago shocked by Xiaya's imposingly soaring and frightening aura. After about a quarter of an hour, Xiaya recovered from the drunken stupor, his body slightly swaying. His entire body suddenly emitting light crackling sounds as if breaking a frozen clay pot, bringing him an indescribable pleasure. Chapter 127, Large-Size Dragon Balls. Just as Xiaya was in a drunken stupor from the powerful strength, space-time ability within his body again activated. Xiaya's consciousness begins to fly away from his body. He saw the emerald green planet Namek as well as the three small stars revolving around it before he keeps flying far away. Next, the silver disc-shaped spiral Milky Way galaxy entered his eyes. At this moment, he once again saw that huge network covering the entire universe, as well as that grand sacred world of Kai at the center of the network. Within a moment, everything in the entire universe seemed to have appeared in his mind. Of course, he only lasted in this situation for an extremely short period of time and then his consciousness again quickly returned to his body. But in that short moment until he had returned, he seemed to have seen a grander world from a higher position. It was a huge world formed from 12 enormous transparent water spheres. The water spheres were bright-colored and were supporting each other in pairs of 2. They were floating in the middle of an azure blue space, forming 6 mysterious balanced groups. Hiss! Xiaya shook his head and again converged his aura. As his strength had increased so suddenly and sharply, it caused him to have a feeling of floating in air. Then, he used Spirit Eye secret skill, and observed himself. This is incredible. He was surprised to discover that his battle power has reached a frightening number, 720,000. It had suddenly tripled. Xiaya couldn't believe that his battle power would increase simply by so much. It was even higher than Frisia's battle power in normal state. Furthermore, how long has it been since he had broken through after he fought with Cooler? Even if he had strengthened his foundation and had fully mastered his power, this time's increase was really somewhat unexpected. In his opinion, with Great Elder's help, it would have already been quite good if he has been able to double his strength, but he never thought that it would triple. However, the surging strength flowing throughout his body was telling him that everything was true. Great Elder, thank you so much. Xiaya said excitedly. Hehe, it was nothing, just a slight effort. But, it's a pity that the power you have in your body is too mysterious and powerful. I could trigger only a little bit of it. For the rest, you still have to depend on yourself to explore it. Great Elder's voice was weak, but a joyful expression was on his face. King of Science, I don't know why, but from the moment I saw you, a change has occurred to the visions of future in my mind. I feel that in the near future, there will apparently be an even greater crisis descending upon planet Namek. At that time hopefully you can help. Great Elder, please rest assured, if planet Namek experiences any calamity in future, I will definitely try my best to help. Xiaya nodded his head, understanding. He realized that what Great Elder said might be Frisia's invasion of planet Namek in the future. It was still 21 years away from till that incident would happen, and Xiaya has absolute confidence in himself that, at that time, he wouldn't lose to Frisia. As for the future vision that Great Elder was saying had changed, Xiaya thinks it may be because of his arrival. Receiving his promise, a smile emerged on Great Elder's face. Thank you so much. Two little girls, you also come over. Let me boost your strength. Xiling and Myers were pleasantly surprised. After seeing Xiaya's successful example, they no longer doubted Great Elder's ability. When they heard Great Elder, the two people scrambled to rush forward. Great Elder's large palms covered the heads of two people, and under his magical ability, their battle power began to quickly soar. After Great Elder removed both of his hands, Xiling's battle power had reached 320,000 while Myers had shockingly reached 100,000. Xiling's battle power, which has increased from 160,000 to 320,000, only doubling, naturally couldn't be compared with Krillin and Son Gohan's tenfold increase in the original work. The reason for this is that Xiling still doesn't have a solid foundation. Part of Xiling's strength was built up from the accumulated potential released after an injury. Compared with the latter's arduous training, she has still not sufficiently tempered her strength. While Myers' battle power rose from around 10,000 to 100,000, it was because Great Elder had fully unlocked her potential. Regarding strength, Myers is naturally inferior to Xiling, but regarding the magnitude of growth, Myers was, however, much higher than Xiling. This might be the advantage of her talent. After their strength increased by such a large amount, Xiaya Group's trip to planet Namek was naturally satisfactory, but when Xiaya saw the huge Dragon Ball placed behind Great Elder, his eyes turned and an outrageous plan formed in his mind. Hence, Xiaya spoke, Great Elder, that crystal ball placed behind you must be the Dragon Ball, right? Can you lend me planet Namek's Dragon Balls to use? Oh! How did you know about Dragon Balls? Surprised, Great Elder's half-closed eyes opened, and a bright light of surprise flashed in his eyes. Xiaya explained, Great Elder, it's like this. I'd been to a planet called Earth, as Earth's Kami is also a Namekian who had fled from planet Namek when it suffered from the great climate change. There also have Dragon Balls on Earth, but their power is not as strong as that of planet Namek's. I had also used their power to rescue a part of my people from Planet Vegeta when it was destroyed. So, there are also Dragon Balls on Earth. No wonder, according to the prophecy, Science should have been completely destroyed. But so many of them have survived. It was because of the Dragon Balls. Great Elder had an expression of understanding. He extended his hand, took the huge Dragon Ball from behind his chair, and gave it to Xiaya. I will give this Dragon Ball to you. Nail, accompany them to collect the Dragon Balls from the villages. I believe that you will appropriately make use of them. As Great Elder has the ability to predict to a certain extent, he can see that Xiaya does not want Dragon Balls to do anything evil, so he simply handed them over. Since there was a huge restriction on using Dragon Balls, their capability cannot exceed their creator. Using Dragon Ball to build up a good relationship with the new king of Science, Great Elder believe it is worth it. He held the huge basketball-sized orange ball in both hands. It has stars inside which appears very bright from every angle. Xiaya smiled towards the Great Elder, and followed Nail out of the Great Elder's residence. Xiling and Myers were eager to give their brand new strength a try. Saiyan, no matter what purpose you have, I hope you will leave Planet Namek immediately after using the Dragon Balls and not disturb the Great Elder, after all, he is very old. Nail was flying ahead wearing a stern expression on his face. Only, it was not so indifferent as it was as at the beginning. Xiaya nodded with a chuckle. Rest assured, after this, we wouldn't trouble Great Elder anymore. This Nail is very conscientious, however, as he was one of the rare battle-type Namekian on Planet Namek, why didn't Great Elder unlock Nail's potential? Does he think that it is not necessary? Xiaya shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Turning around his head, he called out to Xiling and Myers to hurry up. Since Nail's battle power was also extremely high, he could closely follow Xiaya and others, and it didn't take much time to visit the several large villages which were scattered all over the planet Namek. Really, the living conditions of these Namekians was quite hard. There are only 100 people, old and young combined, and in a village, there are only 1,000 Namekians living. With Nail, the Great Elder's bodyguard, personally showing up, Xiaya got the 7 Dragon Balls very smoothly. When the 7 huge Dragon Balls gathered together, the surface of the Dragon Ball immediately flickered brightly with golden lights. Buzz buzz buzz, the low buzzing sound lingered in the air, and with every flicker, they issued low roar sounds of Shenron. Well, now that you have gathered the 7 Dragon Balls, I'll go back to the Great Elder first. I hope you will immediately leave Planet Namek after you are done summoning Shenron. Finished speaking, Nail gave a glance to Xiaya, and then shoo a sword to the sky before flying toward Great Elder's residence, and instantly disappeared in the horizon. Hee. Really a cold-hearted guy, this guy didn't mention to me that summoning Shenron needs to use the Namekian language. Xiaya shook his head. It seems that this Nail deliberately doesn't want them to summon Shenron. Chapter 128, Can I Create Dragon Balls? Looking at Nail's disappearing direction, the corners of Xiaya's mouth slightly curled up. This would hardly pose a problem for him because he had long ago learned Planet Namek's language from Mr. Popo when he was training in the hyperbolic time chamber on Earth. Let's go, we will find a place to summon Shenron. Saying, Xiaya turned towards Xiling and Myers, and then let them each carry 2 Dragon Balls. They chose a spacious and uninhabited place and placed them on the ground. This was a green overgrown grassland. Not far away, there was a light green lake, and further away, there were several small and upright mountains. It was a place far away from human habitation. Such places can be seen everywhere on Planet Namek. They don't have to worry about being disturbed when summoning Shenron here. Dragon Balls, don't disappoint me. Saying that, he arranged the 7 Dragon Balls, and then immediately shouted in Namekian language, "Come out, Shenron." As soon as his voice fell, it was as if some kind of switch had been triggered. Suddenly, dazzling golden radiance burst of the 7 Dragon Balls. Their frequency of flickering gradually accelerated, and in the sky, a wide expanse of dark clouds gradually floated over, quickly covering the entire sky. Bang! The sound of thunder suddenly resounded in the sky, and it gradually got louder. The golden lightning kept flickering amidst the dark clouds, and thunderous rumbling sounds resounded like a mighty army rushing to attack. The imposing aura was vast and magnificent. This scene of summoning was exactly the same as of Earth's Dragon Balls, but its imposing aura was even more magnificent. It was Xiaya's second time seeing the scene of Shenron appearing. Besides, as he was somewhat familiar with Planet Namek's Dragon Ball summoning scene from his past life, he could keep his composure, but Xiling and Myers were both seeing this scene for the first time. For a moment, their faces revealed astonishment from the majestic scene of Shenron appearing. This is the scene of Shenron appearing. Xiling leaned over and asked in a low voice. This earth-shattering doomsday-like scene was extremely shocking, causing her face to turn pale. Her eyes, however, clearly contained excitement. Myers' actions were more simple, she directly hangs onto Xiaya's leg. Although their strength has soared by a large amount, their experiences were still not enough. In fact, their current strength was such that if they go all out, then it was enough to shatter stars. They were suppressed only from Shenron's appearing scene. It can only be said that their experiences were still not enough. Xiaya silently thought in his heart. Rumble! 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 The 7 Dragon Balls made a buzzing sound. Shenron was soon going to come out. Bo! Suddenly, the surface of Dragon Balls burst out with innumerable golden rays of light, and an earth-shaking aura flew out of the Dragon Balls, mixing with the heaven-destroying and exterminating earth power. The golden light snaked upwards and quickly merged with the lightning in the sky. Roar! A deep dragon roar resounded throughout the heaven and earth. In the sky, a huge silhouette appeared. It was the green Shenron, who has a massive body of several thousands of meters. His 2 arms were extremely buff and muscular, while his 4 fingers were flexed into a fist, and a tail directly extended to the top of Dragon Balls. At this time, that green Shenron's head was raised up high and amidst clouds, and was looking down from the sky like a god, despising the common people. Planet Namex Shenron was called Porunga. Its meaning in Planet Namex language was God of Dreams. After the ancient Namekian had received the favor of gods to create Dragon Balls, they had always worshipped the gods who bestowed upon them the power of Dragon Balls, therefore Namekian also call themselves as Dragon Race. Shenron Porunga has a huge body several thousands of meters tall, and while floating in the sky, he was giving forth a strong feeling of oppression. Compared to Earth Shenron's slender build, Porunga's body was much more muscular. His muscular body has well-developed muscles and 2 strong arms. There were black horns on his head and near shoulders. His wide and tall body contained even more formidable power compared to Earth's Shenron. Since he has long horns on his huge shoulders and massive head, doesn't he look like the dragon in legends? Porunga opened his scarlet eyes, and gazed down at the people below before his booming voice rang out in the sky, "Thou who hast gathered the 7 Dragon Balls, now speak forth thy wish. I shall grant thee any 3 wish. I have been waiting for this moment." Xiaya had a smile on his face. He took a deep breath and looked at Porunga, saying in Namekian's language, "Shenron Porunga, my first wish, please give me the ability to create Dragon Balls." Earth-shattering. Xiaya's first wish was astonishing. Unexpectedly, he wants to get the ability to create Dragon Balls same as the Namekians. He was also trying to test the power of Planet Namex Dragon Balls. Xiaya knows that Planet Namex Dragon Ball was more powerful than Earth's Dragon Ball. It was solely not just because of body's size. There seems to be some kind of rule in the Dragon Ball world: the bigger the Dragon Balls are, the stronger Shenron's power will be. Planet Namex Dragon Balls were more powerful than Earth's Dragon Ball. There is no doubt about this, but in the end how strong it is, whether it can fulfill his wish, he doesn't know. In the sky, Shenron Porunga was silent for a while, 2 antennae hanging down, before his booming voice finally echoed in the sky. "I'm sorry, your wish is beyond my ability. Please change thy wish." "It's really not possible." Xiaya frowned and inwardly thought. Although he had long guessed that Porunga might not be able to fulfill his wish, Xiaya could not help but be somewhat disappointed that even the more powerful Porunga could not fulfill this wish, then Earth Shenron, even more, would not be able to do. To be honest, Xiaya does not much care about the 2 wishes from Dragon Balls because he believes in his own strength. But, he still has a greater ambition in his heart and hopes to acquire the ability to create Dragon Balls, however now it seems that it is impossible. If he can also create Dragon Balls, although he wouldn't necessarily use it, however, if he runs into some problem that he cannot solve, it would without a doubt give himself or people by his side an alternative. It's a pity. It seems in the Dragon Ball world only Namekians have the ability to create Dragon Balls. This kind of ability seems to be imprinted in Namekian's bloodline. Shenron's power has a huge limitation: that it cannot exceed the capabilities of its creator. Naturally, it is impossible to change the bloodline of others. Otherwise, if everyone wishes to receive Majin Buu's bloodline, then wouldn't the universe turn upside down? "Porunga, please tell me if I want to get the ability to create Dragon Ball, is it possible?" Xiaya once again asked, making a wish. It was similar to the situation when Son Goku had asked Earth Shenron about Super Saiyan God in the original work. Xiaya directly asked Porunga if there was a possibility to create Dragon Balls. Suddenly a crimson light flashed in Porunga's huge dragon eyes, who was floating in the air, before his booming voice once again resounded. Dragon Ball's creation technique is a unique ability which Dragon God Zalama had bestowed upon Namekians. If you want to obtain the ability to create Dragon Balls, then you have to get permission from Dragon God Zalama, or find the more powerful Super Dragon Balls. Acquiring permission from Dragon God Zalama or find the Super Dragon Ball. Hearing Porunga's reply, Xiaya's eyes suddenly lit up, and bear this 2 crucial answers in his mind. Chapter 129, 3 Wishes. Naturally, he ruled out the first option of obtaining Dragon God Zamala's permission because that was basically impossible. First, not to mention whether he could find that Dragon God from legends or not. And even if he is found, he might not necessarily agree. To be honest, Xiaya was somewhat afraid of the higher gods like Dragon God Zalama. So, he turned his attention to the Super Dragon Balls. According to his knowledge of the original work, he knew that the Super Dragon Balls were especially big. They were gigantic Dragon Balls the size of planets that were floating in space. After the Dragon God Zalama created them, he scattered them throughout both Universe 6 and 7. It was not mentioned in the former sagas in which Goku defeated Majin Buu, but it was mentioned in the latter saga of the original work. In the latter part of the story, it stated that Son Goku's universe was the 7th universe out of 12 other universes. This meant that besides his universe, there existed 11 other universes of the same scale. In fact, the moment he saw the god of destruction Beerus on planet Vegeta, he knew that the Dragon Ball world he was in was a bigger place compared to the one in the original Dragon Ball manga. This only served as a motivation for him to become stronger. Because the Super Dragon Balls were personally created and polished by the Dragon God, they were fundamentally different from the Namekian's mini Dragon Balls. And naturally, the Super Dragon Ball's power was much more powerful with a clear contrast. First is that Earth's Dragon Balls which had been created by Kami were less powerful. In the beginning, when Saiyans had invaded Earth, they weren't able to deal with Vegeta who had come to Earth. In contrast, Planet Namek's Dragon Balls were little stronger, but when a wish was made to transfer Goku back to Earth, they still required permission from Goku himself. In comparison, the Super Dragon Balls were so domineering that it didn't need anyone's permission. It actually directly switched Son Goku's body who had reached the realm of Super Saiyan God, indirectly causing Goku's death. The disparity between the three was evident. So when Porunga said that the Super Dragon Ball could fulfill his wish, Xiaya believed it. The only problem was that Super Dragon Balls were scattered throughout Universes 6 and 7. How to obtain the Dragon Balls was giving him a headache. Suddenly, he thought of those illusory 12 colorful water spheres he had seen when he was nearing the end of unlocking his potential. That wouldn't be the multiverse encompassing the 12 universes, right? Thinking of the universe network that he witnessed a year ago when his strength had increased greatly and as he accidentally stepped onto the sacred world of Kai, he was certain that it was. Last time he went to the sacred world, he was able to see the entire universe 7. Now, his strength has greatly increased and space-time ability has once again activated. So, it does not seem too improbable for him to see the entire multiverse. However, he would have to carefully research it in the future in order to know for sure. Then, Shenron, my second wish is to learn the Supreme Kai's divine language. Xiaya made his second wish. This was done because the divine language was used when making a wish on the Super Dragon Balls. That is very easy. Porunga spat out in a loud voice. A red light shone, and suddenly Xiaya's mind shook. He closed his eyes to calm his thoughts and a completely new language appeared in his mind. He was able to understand it as if it was his mother tongue, and speak it in a natural manner. This was the divine language that was only spread among beings like Supreme Kai. The second wish has been granted. The third and last wish, speak. Shenron Porunga, my third wish is to know the location of all the planets among the 12 universes. When I use instant transmission, the coordinates should all automatically appear in my mind. With a little thought, Xiaya made his wish. His third wish was to expand his instant transmission's teleportation range. The Yardrat's method of instant transmission was to concentrate on a particular individual's ki, while his space-time ability needed to ascertain coordinates between the two locations. Although the new fused skill from the two had the advantages of the two, he only has the ancient star chart of the Milky Way which has certain limitations. Thy wish has been granted, but the range thou hath spoken of is too large. My ability can only tell thee of the coordinates of the planets of Universe 6 and 7. That will do. Although it was a pity, Xiaya was perfectly satisfied. There was essentially no difference in the location of planets between Universes 6 and 7. Porunga's eyes shone with a red light, and like endless grains of sand in the sea, the coordinates of the planets flooded into his brain, fusing into his consciousness. Shortly after, they quickly disappeared without a trace. This massive amount of information would mostly be hidden deep inside, and would not take up any of his brain's capacity. It was only when he needed to use instant transmission will this information appear. Otherwise, all this data would be a huge burden on his brain. Human, thy wishes have all been granted. Farewell. Saying this, Porunga ascended towards the sky. As Porunga ascended into the sky, the 7 dragon balls shot up and immediately dispersed throughout planet Namek, and the whole sky regained its brightness. The beautiful sun shone down once again, illuminating the ground and providing a warm and auspicious aura. After his wishes were granted, Xiaya shook his head contentedly. Standing there, he started to test the new effects of instant transmission. Sure enough, when he wanted to teleport, huge amounts of data would appear in his mind, making travel very fast and convenient. However, he could only see the areas within Universe in his mind at this time. The moment he tried to observe the areas beyond Universe 7, a peculiar barrier would obstruct him. The information of Universe 6 would appear very blurry. This barrier should be the crystalline wall between the universes. There are still 11 other universes outside this barrier that alongside Universe 7 exists within this multiverse. There were a total of 12 universes in this multiverse, and according to the legends in an even more ancient era, there were actually 18 universes. These all Xiaya knows. Hence, he smiled faintly and no longer cared about it. As for how to break through this universe crystal wall to enter Universe 6, that was a matter of the future. However, he feels that his focus should be on the sacred world of Kai. Because the sacred world of the Kai was the center of the entire multiverse, it surely plays a role in managing the development of the multiverse to a certain extent. Moreover, Supreme Kai who lives on the sacred world of Kai was born with the ability to travel to and fro among the various universes through the universe crystal walls. As Xiaya stood there lost in contemplations, Xiling who had been standing to the side came over and asked in a confused voice, "Xiaya, what did you wish to Shenron just now?" Both Xiling and Myers could not understand the Namekian language, so they were not aware of what Xiaya had wished for. "I asked Shenron for the ability to create Dragon Balls, but unfortunately Planet Namek's Dragon Balls did not have enough power to grant my wish. So instead I made a wish to improve my instant transmission skill." Xiaya roughly explained what he had wished. After listening, Xiling felt that it was a pity that Shenron couldn't grant Xiaya his wish. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but hold some disdain for Shenron in her heart. It turns out that these Dragon Balls weren't that amazing after all. Right, our strength has increased by so much all at once. We must properly immerse ourselves in training for some time. Otherwise, it would be extremely careless of us if we are not able to perfectly control our strength. Xiaya said after turning around. Their power had suddenly multiplied by a large amount. Although unlocking their potential through the Great Elder's ability was basically harmless, it was not a simple matter to be able to perfectly control the power which had been increased so quickly. Listening to Xiaya, Xiling and Myers were deep in thought. Then, under Xiaya's directions, they used instant transmission to travel to a suitable planet to train on. It was an ice-cold planet which was covered in snow all year round. The temperature here was clearly very low, comparable to the desolate planet which Xiaya and the others had previously trained on. However, in comparison, this ice-cold planet had a much stronger gravity. It was roughly between 100x and 200x gravity. Naturally, this sort of temperature and gravity was nothing for Xiaya and Xiling whose battle power was in the several hundred of thousands, but for a little while, Myers was having a difficult time adapting to it. Staggering, Myers fell down to the ground, her body shivering from the cold. Chapter 130, Developing a New Skill. It's cold. Myers shivered as a cold wind blew, and she couldn't help but shrink her body as she hugged herself. She looked pitifully at him with a pair of big tearful eyes. Her slender and delicate body was like a young piece of grass in the heavy snowstorm, looking very helpless. Xiaya silently glanced at her. Look at this brat acting pitiful, how could a Saiyan not withstand just this little amount of cold? Towards her acting, he acted as if he didn't see a thing. Xiaya looked away and said, "The gravity on this planet is quite suitable for our current strength. We shall train here for some time till we have become familiar with our strength before heading back." Although training in the gravity machine would be just as effective, the space in the machine was too small for people at their level, making it impossible for them to do whatever they wanted and use their full strength. In short, the machine was very effective at increasing stamina and physical strength, but it wasn't as effective in improving combat proficiency and strength control capability. When it comes to improving both combat proficiency and strength control, it requires a lot of actual combat and attacking with full strength. The small room in the gravity machine would not be able to withstand their power. To the side, after seeing that her pitiful act couldn't arouse his sympathy, Myers pursed her lips and helplessly answered, "Okay." Xiaya nodded, and also glanced at Xiling. After receiving her affirmative response, the three split up and began to train individually. This time around, the results he gained on planet Namek exceeded even Xiaya's expectations. He was very satisfied with his battle power of 720,000, because he knew that Frisia only had 530,000 battle power in his normal state. On top of that, the instant transmission skill could be used anytime and anywhere, and including the many other advantages, Xiaya wasn't afraid of any other forces in the Milky Way galaxy. Of course, this was only regarding his personal well-being. As the leader of his race, he wanted to lead his people to freely thrive in the galaxy. For that, his strength right now was still somewhat lacking. So Xiaya took a deep breath, and began to sort out and ponder over his strong and weak points. First and foremost, his space-time ability. It was undoubtedly the most powerful trump card that he had. If necessary, he could use it to easily defeat someone more powerful than him and even kill them. However, despite such a convenient ability, Xiaya also knew the flaws that came with this space-time ability. It was that this ability was way too convenient. So much so, that it would not let him to engage in a real battle and allow him to fight to his heart's content. Saiyans can only grow stronger through real battle. Victory or defeat is merely an outcome, and only through the process of fighting would a Saiyan grow non-stop. In this aspect, his space-time ability revealed its flaw. The long-term reliance on this ability would only serve to make his strength stagnate, affecting even his foundation. The pros and cons naturally had to be considered. Moreover, when it comes to incredibly strong experts like Cooler, the ability not proved to be much effective. Because of this, in Xiaya's heart, the space-time ability could only assist him occasionally. He knew that he must create a skill that can truly display the advantages of his space-time ability. Just like how Ki was utilized, Master Roshi developing the Kamehameha, Master Shen and his Doden Ray, the Thunder Shock Surprise and Energy Blast from Master Mutato hundreds of years ago, all which were popular in this world. Yet these skills could not compare with the Destructo Disc, Spirit Ball and the Special Beam Cannon which were learned by the warriors during the later stages of Dragon Ball. However, it at least indicated that the usage of Energy Wave had been innovated and was consistently improved. From training in Ki, Xiaya associated it with the development of ability skills. Maybe he can develop an auxiliary skill suitable for combat based off of his space-time ability, which would not let his space-time ability to waste away, a castle in the midair asterisk, nor would it affect his future growth. Asterisk metaphor for useless. Just as Myers had learned Planet Yardrat's deflection secret skill, it also brought upon inspiration to Xiaya. Her deflection secret skill was able to enhance her defensive ability by diverting her opponent's attack through space, thus achieving its purpose of improving defense. Plus, it mostly exhibited the usage of space abilities function, giving Xiaya a very good example to work off of. Is it possible that he can also develop such a practical skill through his space-time ability? As a matter of fact, Xiaya once used a similar method while fighting Cooler a year ago. From one point of view, his ability did not affect his opponent's attacks, but it buffed him by increasing his body's overall movement speed and physical strength. In battle, there were 5 important factors that would determine the outcome of a battle. Situational awareness, attack speed, attack power, resistance, as well as recovery. As long as his space-time ability could increase any one of them, it can be considered a success. After having this thought and determining his line of thinking, the next step would to put it into practice. If I can rely on the space-time ability for assistance, it would be an extremely good plan. Xiaya chuckled. He pondered, and gradually began to put into effect his ideas. To change the space-time ability into an auxiliary skill, it was simple to say but difficult to actually do. Just for developing and testing this skill alone, Xiaya would have to spend a long period of time. 1 month later, the embryonic form of his first skill finally took shape. It was a skill he derived from Myers' deflection secret skill. He called it shifting. Essentially what it did was to cover the surface of his skin with a thin layer of space-time membrane, as if he was wearing some piece of protective clothing. When an enemy's attack hit him, he could cover his skin with this thin layer of space-time force as an immediate response. Using this skill, he could deflect an energy attack that was 30% of his own power in the form of space radiation, thereby increasing his physical defense. The clouds are light and the sun was hidden. A snowy white mist colored the chasm between heaven and earth. Xiaya was floating in the air 6 to 7 meters above the ground. Due to the cold weather, the white battle armor on his body was frozen and was covered with a layer of frost. By merely shaking it would cause small ice crystals to fall to the ground. Ha! Xiaya stretched out his hand and a brightly flickering energy ball suddenly condensed in his palm and shot out. Its deep ocean blue color was somewhat dark, and the key on the surface of the energy ball producing a low zzz sounds. This energy ball was seriously condensed by Xiaya. After such powerful compression, I'm afraid that its might was even more terrifying than Frisia's produced in an instant planet-destroying ball. Once it hits the ground, the entire planet would turn into universe dust in a flash. Its immense energy was frightening, but Xiaya didn't seem to care the least. His palm just casually flipped, and he threw the big deep blue energy ball directly into the sky. The earth-shattering aura emanated out in all directions like surging waves. At this time, Xiaya faintly smiled as his silhouette flashed and suddenly appeared in front of the energy ball. He did not put up any sort of defense, and he took the brunt of the energy ball's fierce attack with a loud shout. The frightening energy that was enough to destroy a planet exploded out in an instant. Rumble! The majestic and frightening energy scattered in all directions, turning into a huge ball of flame reaching several kilometers in the sky. The clouds scattered in a flash, and an earth-shaking aura was emitted from the point of the explosion, mixing together with the immense power. Invisible waves of power rippled out in concentric circles along the spatial network. The entire icy planet even slightly trembled. As the smoke began to dissipate, and vision began to clear, a young boy could be seen standing upright completely unscathed in the air. The explosion that was enough to destroy an entire planet could not cause any harm to him at all. Xiaya patted his pale white chest that had been burned by the energy bomb, eyebrows furrowed slightly before he quickly relaxed. This shifting skill can at most divert energy attacks equivalent to 30% of my strength. Furthermore, it seems there is an upper limit to how much it can withstand. Xiaya seriously pondered this issue. He knew that there was an upper limit to the endurance capability of space. Once the energy exceeded the endurance capability of space, it would shatter. But it wouldn't for a long while before he had to worry about this problem. He now has 720,000 battle power, which meant that even if an enemy with the battle power of 240,000 attacked with full strength, he would only have to use this skill to be fully immune to their attack. Naturally, the premise is that opponent's attack had to be pure energy. Chapter 131, Hoi Poi Capsules, Towards the Universe. Next, Xiaya began to do physical body exercises. This type of training had to be done on a regular basis. Just like with Son Goku's Kaioken and the Super Saiyan transformation, the greater the body's physical strength, the more it can withstand higher levels of body transformations. In the later stages of the original work, why did Son Goku stop using the Kaioken? The power increase provided by the Kaioken in the latter stage was dramatically less compared to when transforming into a Super Saiyan, but most importantly, his body's strength was not enough to handle the burden. Transforming into the Super Saiyan already places a great burden on his body. If a situation occurred where his body became unable to handle the Kaioken, his entire body would completely collapse in itself. A strong body is a necessity to him if he wished to continue down his path to power. Therefore, Xiaya attached great importance to physical body training. In a boundless snowy field, the icy cold wind blew across the endless expanse. The wind cut like a cold knife, leaving a stinging sensation across the face. In this extremely harsh environment, Xiaya persistently brandished his arms. He was punching, diving, and constantly withstanding fierce energy attacks, and sparkling crystal-clear sweat poured out like fine rain from his body. The originally spotless white battle armor on his body had already broken down into thin strips. During this training period, time passed ever so slowly. Deciding that it was sufficient, Xiaya put on some clean clothes and got Xiling to spar with him. Although Xiling's strength was much weaker than his, the sparring still helped both of them get familiar and fluent with their strength and skills. Thus, the days passed as they fought. Fighting was the best way to test the results of their training, especially for Xiling and Myers. Every time after they finished fighting with Xiaya, they were always able to realize their shortcomings, and thus would run back to slowly train. Ever since they arrived on this huge ice-cold planet, the occasional fierce flashes of light would explode out, and the planet itself would sometimes tremble due to the tremendous forces it had to withstand. When Xiaya converged his aura with satisfaction, he suddenly realized that a little over 2 months had passed. Clenching his fists, a vast and mighty energy began to flow within his body. As he felt his body brimming with power, his face could not help but reveal a bright smile. These past 2 months of training was incredibly worthwhile. He could smoothly control his power now. Xiaya stood still for a while before suddenly leaping forward. His body quickly disappeared, becoming a beam of light before reappearing 1,000 miles away on a white plateau. This is Myers' aura, what is she doing here? With a trace of doubt, he flew towards her position. In the distance, he noticed a white snowman built on the precipice of a cliff. It was Myers, wrapped up in a round snowman, leaving only her blinking eyes. Seeing that Xiaya had come, the snowman burst open, and she stepped out of its broken shell. "Little girl, I told you to train properly. What are you doing here wrapped up as a snowman?" Xiaya scolded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Hee. Actually, I've already finished with my training a long time ago, but you and Xiling were still training, so I got bored." Myers pouted, and her small bell-like voice sounded out. "You were bored, so you wrapped yourself up as a snowman?" Xiaya couldn't help but be dumbfounded as he listened to her, asking, "You finished your training so soon?" A few days earlier than you," Myers said proudly. Xiaya nodded his head and was somewhat surprised. Although he knew that Myers' talent was astounding and not inferior to Vegeta one whit. Seeing her control the strength within her body so quickly, he still could not help be a little surprised. "I hope she isn't joking." Stopping his thoughts there, Xiaya revealed a smile and said, "Why don't we spar?" "Okay." Myers readily agreed. Half an hour later, she was heavily gasping for breath as she grabbed a handful of snow and stuffed it to her mouth. She was clearly exhausted from fighting. Xiaya nodded and said, "Good, you made a lot of progress. You are quite a talent. Let's go look for Xiling and wait until she finishes her training before we leave from this place." "Okay." After hearing Xiaya's words, Myers beamed with joy and jumped up from the ground. A bright smile like a blossoming peach appeared on her little face. She had long since gotten bored of staying here. Soon, they used instant transmission and teleported over to Xiling's location. 7 days later, in the East area. The southeastern region of the East area was a relatively peaceful area. In a galaxy that emits red light, a blue planet was revolving around its sun. This planet was called Planet Vegeta, and it was only slightly larger than Earth. And it was thriving with numerous species. It was a vibrant planet that birthed great flames of civilization. Because this southeastern region was relatively peaceful, interplanetary trade was booming with business. Nearby several starfields around Planet Vegeta were important trading planets, and many civilizations would come here to purchase materials they needed for their race. Because they mutually looked after one another, Planet Vegeta was one of the few planets that did not need the protection from the Galactic Patrol. In recent times, a group called the Xiayas suddenly appeared in their interplanetary trade market. They brought along something they called Hoipoi capsules, which could supposedly compress huge amounts of materials and supplies into a tiny capsule. The moment the Hoipoi capsules appeared on the trading market, it immediately became a highly sought-after item by other civilizations. It was an epoch-defining invention. Its emergence allowed the Xiaya's reputation to skyrocket. Currently, the hottest trade on Planet Vegeta was the sale of the Hoipoi capsules. Xiayas made a lot of money from this, so their resources and riches quickly became plentiful. "Hey Xiaya, is this Hoipoi capsule really a technology from Earth?" A delicate little girl dressed like a porcelain doll asked with surprise as she pinched the tiny capsule in her hand. It was hard to believe that this tiny capsule could actually hold a luxury villa in it. Although Myers had seen Hoipoi capsules before, she was still surprised when she saw the capsules selling in the market. They have rapidly expanded and strengthened. Yes. Xiaya nodded as he glanced at the two girls beside him, saying, "Xiayas are acting as Dr. Brief's distributors for the Hoipoi capsules in interplanetary trade." Although most of the money earned for selling the goods went to the Xiayas, Dr. Brief also received a lot of alien technology. Thinking back to how Dookila and the other Xiayas reached this agreement with Bulma's father, Xiaya could not help but be surprised. He didn't think that the original works heaven-defying tech which could compress things from Earth would suddenly expand to the East area. Of course, the biggest earner was Xiaya himself. As most of the materials and goods that Xiayas received were all placed under his name. However, Bulma's father was not at a loss. The advanced technology provided by the Xiayas were more than enough to perfectly satisfy Dr. Brief. This time around, Xiaya's main purpose of coming to Planet Vegeta was to check out the sales of the Hoipoi capsule. However, after seeing the current situation, the capsules were undoubtedly widely sought after, and were actually out of stock. "Hehe Xiaya, this time you were able to get a great deal." Xiling came over and said with an excited look on her face. Xiaya patted her shoulder and smiled, it may be true that I've gotten a good deal, but both of you also get to benefit from it. Upon saying this, under both Xialing and Meyer's puzzled gaze, he took out 2 black cards and gave it to them. Planet Vegeta was an exceptional place in the universe, flourishing in not only transportation, but also tourism and the entertainment industry. It could actually be considered a major center of the whole East area. However, the expenditure in such a place was also incredibly high. Ordinary people were simply not qualified to spend anything here. There were many famous tourist spots that people would go to sightsee, and others would happily visit the shopping center to buy rare goods. Planet Vegeta's Trade and Commerce building towered in the sky, and even a random building was much taller than Xiaya's past world's tallest building. There were a variety of beautiful products inside, but here, bargains did not exist. Xiaya looked around and discovered that every single product was incredibly expensive. But Xiaya had plenty of money in his hands, so he naturally didn't feel flustered. The earnings he'd gotten from the hoi poi capsule sales allowed him to not worry about the prices. What's more, he had already brought the girls out to have some fun, so how could he care about this? So they wantonly squandered their money. The large and small items were either packed into their hoi poi capsules or placed in Xiaya's dimensional space, causing the money in the black cards to quickly plummet. Chapter 132, Planet Vegeta's Guardian. We'll move separately for the next couple of hours. You can go wherever you want, buy anything you like, and just make sure to meet back here again. After strolling around for a while, Xiaya looked at the time and realized that there was only an hour or 2 before the sun sets. Planet Vegeta's daytime was much longer than Earth's. Go have fun, I will be sitting in the park nearby. Alright, there are so many kinds of aliens here, and I like their foods even more. I want to sample all their foods at least. Myers extended her tongue and licked her lips. The young girl seemed to have no other hobbies besides eating. You only know how to eat. I still want to keep shopping. Xialing said before heading towards the other shops while carrying her bags of purchased clothes. After entering puberty, Xialing began to pay more attention to how she dressed herself. These 2 brats, seeing them go towards the respective places they were interested in, Xiaya shook his head with a smile. Then he walked towards the nearby park. After a little while, he arrived at a relatively beautiful park. It was a small park located at the foot of Qingfeng Mountain. It had a low and flat mountaintop, with blue stone paved paths snaking up and down the mountain, the streams between the mountain roads all converging into a crystal clear river. The whole park rested against the mountains and rivers, built in the style of classical architecture. The place held a rustic elegance, presenting an atmosphere of simple solitude. Xiaya casually found a place next to the mountain's steep hill and cupped his chin as he leisurely watched passerbys come and go under the mountain. An unbidden relaxing and happy feeling sprang up in his heart. Taking out a tea set from his dimensional space and lighting a small fire to boil the water, he picked up the cup of tea with both hands and took a deep whiff of the faint aroma of the tea. He took a sip, and leisurely continued to observe the pedestrians under the foot of the mountain. All of a sudden, his heart became clear and comfortable. The sun shone beautiful rays of light that illuminated the earth. As time went by, these rays began to change from directly projecting to obliquely projecting, and the dazzling sun revealed a bright red sunset. Oh! The 2 hours passed so quickly and the sun is already down. Well, it's time to head back and meet up with them. Stretching his body, Xiaya stood up, and put away his tea set, getting ready to meet with Xialing and Myers. At this time, Xiaya suddenly raised his head as he felt a very powerful aura approach in his direction. Wow, interesting. The strength of this key is at least above 100,000 battle power. Planet Vegeta still has such an expert. Xiaya was surprised and sat down once again to await the arrival of this unexpected guest. According to what he sensed, this key was gentle and calm, so it didn't seem as if the other party was someone evil. After a while, a handsome man with yellow skin came over. Xiaya discovered that the man had restrained his aura, as if he was an ordinary traveler slowly walking in his direction. If Xiaya had not grasped the spirit eye skill, perhaps he would have really been deceived. With everything about the other party was revealed before him in his eyes, Xiaya's lips couldn't help but rise in a faint smile. He observed the man approaching him. He actually has 170,000 battle power, which is much stronger than Cooler's armored squadron. Your Excellency, are you Mr. Xiaya of Planet Hongshan? The man's attitude was neither servile or overbearing, and he had a strong leader's aura around him. Xiaya nodded lightly and asked, I am the leader of Planet Hongshan, and you are? Ha ha ha, my name is Rega, the guardian of Planet Vegeta. I heard that Mr. Xiaya had come to Planet Vegeta, so I have specially come over to visit you. I just didn't realize that Mr. Xiaya would be such a promising young man. Rega spoke modestly, not even a little pride or aloofness of an expert could be seen. Xiaya also nodded with a smile. The other person gave him a good feeling. It seems that the Scion's reputation in Planet Vegeta was quite good. No one would have thought that the originally infamous Scions would suddenly become peacekeeping warriors of the galaxy. Since Rega was in contact with the Galactic Patrol, he was naturally aware of the Scion's current level of power. Therefore, it was extremely important to visit the leader of the Scions, Xiaya. From the beginning, he could not sense any energy fluctuations from Xiaya's body. This was an incredible shock to him, and he couldn't help but be even more courteous to Xiaya. This is nothing. Compared to Mr. Rega, who is the guardian of a starfield, I am much more inferior. Nobody dislikes flattery, so Xiaya responded cordially while information regarding Rega appeared in his mind. Rega, a native of a low-level planet. But because he accidentally ate a strange fruit, he experienced a huge increase in strength, causing a sensation within the surrounding starfield. Almost immediately, large numbers of aliens enthusiastically rushed to his home world to investigate. However, when the aliens reached his home world, the planet had turned into a desert, and no one obtained anything useful. From then on, Rega began to wander the universe before he settled down on Planet Vegeta, guarding it to this day. These were past events from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Because he came from a race with a long lifespan, Rega's appearance never changed. Due to his existence, Planet Vegeta became a rare paradise in the southeastern region of the East area. Although his mouth was spewing out flattering words, Xiaya had also specially researching Rega. He knew that Rega was a person who could tolerate loneliness. To be honest, it was quite admirable that such a strong person like him would guard Planet Vegeta for several hundred years without stepping a foot out. Xiaya and Rega continued to chat, both at the first step of creating friendly relations. More friendly relations means more connections, and this would only serve to increase the development of Scions in the East area. Not to mention that this person was the powerful guardian of Planet Vegeta. When Rega discovered Xiaya's true strength, his yellow face could not help but reveal a dumbstruck expression, his eyes wide with shock and awe. He had never met such a strong person before. After a few minutes, Rega said his goodbyes and left. Afterwards, when the leader of Planet Vegeta asked how strong the leader of Planet Hongshan was, Rega looked back on his meeting with Xiaya and shook his head, sighing. He was simply unfathomable. Planet Vegeta's leader was silent. It seems that Planet Hongshan was destined to be their most important cooperation partner. Not only do they possess advanced technology, but their leader's strength alone was enough to show disdain to most other planets. He wondered if they should try to deepen their cooperation. Meanwhile, Xiaya went over to meet with Xiling and Myers. When he arrived at the meeting place, he found that he was early, and neither Xiling nor Myers had come back yet. These two brats have not even a little notion of time. Muttering to himself, Xiaya folded his arms across his chest and quietly waited while leaning against a marble pillar in front of a shop. Soon he saw Xiling flying towards him while carrying a small and large bags in her hands. "Hey Xiaya, you're here early." While putting the items into a hoi poi capsule, Xiaya raised his eyebrows and said, "It's you who is late, okay? Didn't I buy a lot of these things for you on Earth?" "Hehe, it's rare that I can go shopping, so naturally I had to buy some more. And the things that you gave me, I already put them in my collection." Xiling cutely stuck out her tongue. At age 15, she had grown to be very radiant and vivacious. Her beautiful cloud-like hair were tied with a ribbon, and a few strands of short hair half covered her eyes. Her elegant pair of eyebrows were shaped like a curved moon and both eyes were bright and sparkling, with jade-like skin that was tender and supple like honey. She had a slender figure which was like a bunch of orchids that were quiet and natural. In particular, the curved lines of her chest made her look even more youthful and beautiful. "Right, about Myers, has she come back yet?" Xiling looked around. "Not yet. I also don't know where she ran off to." "Haha, isn't that her coming over?" Xiaya caught a glimpse of someone out of the corner of his eyes and pointed to the side. He could see a delicate little girl energetically running over, the little bells on her wrist jingling. She held a large plate of steaming hot food and was stuffing her face. She looked really stupid. Xiaya raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but hold his forehead. Chapter 133, Super Dragon Balls. Time flies in the vast Milky Way. Within the vast universe, the bright and magnificent Milky Way was like a silk ribbon, and the vast sky was glittering with brightly shining stars. Both small and large stars dotted the night sky, sparkling like brilliant diamonds. Surrounded by a vast expanse of darkness, the stars exuded a bewitching pale white light. Suddenly, there was a flash of light. In the deep and quiet space, it was extremely eye-catching, and an indistinct dot appeared amidst the darkness. It was a small silver-grey spaceship, not big at all, only a few tenths of meters long. Xiaya was standing alone in the pilot's cabin. Since the ship was piloted via AI, he only needed to input some instructions. According to the Dragon Ball radar, the first Super Dragon Ball should be nearby. In the spaceship, Xiaya was holding a new type of Dragon Ball radar whilst staring at the deep universe outside the porthole. A few months had passed since Xiaya returned with Xiling and Myers from Planet Vegeta. He had been training on Planet Hongshan ever since, and now has finally begun to look for the Super Dragon Balls. Xiaya was looking for the Super Dragon Balls in order to make a wish to Super Shenron, thereby gaining the ability to create Dragon Balls. The Dragon Balls were a miraculous object, which can generally invert both cause and effect and interfere with reality. As long as it is not against the laws of nature or beyond the ability of the creator, the Dragon Balls were a super artifact which are always successful. Although this artifact had many limitations, Xiaya believes that by having Dragon Balls of his own which he could use as he wish, the chances of Planet Hongshan and its people's survival would be further guaranteed. In fact, there was one more important point. That is, Xiaya was extremely fascinated with the miraculous power of the Dragon Balls. When he saw the Dragon Ball anime in his previous life, he was always very curious. What kind of mechanism did Shenron use to grant people's wishes? Was the process similar to Full Metal Alchemist's exchange of equal value, or like GT where there are fixed negative effects? Being unclear about this fact, there was always a feeling of unease when using the Dragon Balls. However, all he could do was to wait until he had a thorough understanding of the mechanism behind the Dragon Balls before he could make a proper judgment. Planet Namex Shenron Porunga had told him that there were two ways to obtain the ability to create Dragon Balls. One was to get Dragon God Zalama's permission, and the other was to use the Super Dragon Balls made by Zalama to make a wish. Xiaya's choice was naturally to use the Super Dragon Balls. First, he looked for the Fadea scientists to completely upgrade the Dragon Ball radar, so that its search range could be expanded to the entire universe. Then, he left Planet Hongshan alone in a small spaceship. In the boundless universe, it was not at all difficult to find the Super Dragon Balls with the help of a Dragon Ball radar, especially when he could use instant transmission. The only thing that troubled Xiaya was how could he move the Super Dragon Balls after he found them. This was because the size of a Super Dragon Ball was seriously too big, with a diameter of more than 37,000 kilometers. This was already on the scale of a huge planet. Compared to them, Planet Hongshan was merely a small marble. With such a huge mass, the issue of moving it would be a huge headache. It would be really easy for Xiaya to destroy a large planet of this size, but as for moving it, he frankly had not even the slightest assurance. Ah, found it! In the Dragon Ball radar, the twinkling bright spots were getting closer and closer. Xiaya immediately commanded the spaceship's AI to get close at full speed. Soon, a giant dark orange object appeared in front of Xiaya. It was a super crystal ball that was even larger than an average planet. Scattered amidst the chaotic galaxy, it looked absolutely spectacular. This is a Super Dragon Ball? Its size is really huge. Looking at the ball in front of him that was larger than an average planet, Xiaya's face revealed a shocked expression. He was really astonished by the sheer size of the Super Dragon Ball. Compared to this, both Earth's and Namex Dragon Balls were really too small. It was no wonder that rumor had it that Planet Namex Dragon Balls were simply pieces of polished fragments from the Super Dragon Balls. This is really too big. How do I transport this? Xiaya was vexed. Such a huge size could not be transported even with the aid of the most advanced alien technology. Furthermore, since it was also a Dragon Ball, it would probably be difficult for Earth Shenron's power to affect the Super Dragon Ball. It would seem that I can only use instant transmission to see if I can move this planet together with me. After thinking over it, he couldn't think of any other way. Xiaya gazed at the massive Dragon Ball and swallowed. He was determined to give it a try. Ha! A raging ki suddenly wrapped around his body and he began to float in the space. He pressed down on a special button on the spaceship. Following this, there was a loud banging noise, smoke arose, and the spaceship turned into a tiny hoi poi capsule. The Hoi Poi capsule had become very popular on planet Hongshan. Putting it away, Xiaya quickly approached the Super Dragon Ball. Because the duration of the state where he can wrap himself in ki was very short, Xiaya could not stay in space for a long period of time. He must finish everything in the shortest time possible. As he got closer and closer to the Dragon Ball, the huge size of it became more and more obvious. When Xiaya's hands touched the surface of the Dragon Ball, it was like being on the surface of an enormous planet. As far as the eyes could see, it looked like an orange-colored, transparent glass ball. Looking below, there were even several gilded scarlet stars that could be seen at the center of the ball. They were penetrating and crystal clear, as if small diamonds were dotted on an orange plate's surface, displaying a touch of quiet beauty. This Super Dragon Ball is really strange. There isn't much gravity even though it has such a large volume. Xiaya thought with emotion, and he began to wholeheartedly use his space-time power. The majestic and boundless energy from within his body began to cover the surface of the Dragon Ball. As he kept channeling his energy, Xiaya's forehead began to exude small droplets of sweat. Gradually, the surface of the huge Dragon Ball was covered by a layer of net-like, translucent lines. As the translucent shiny lines became more and more condensed, the Super Dragon Ball began to vibrate ever so slightly, moving a little from its original position. Launch! Xiaya loudly shouted, while increasing the output of space-time energy, and then tried using instant transmission. Thus, the largest scale of instant transmission in history was launched. Taking along an entire planet with instant transmission was a brilliant innovative use of this ability. Both the Yard Rats and Supreme Kai were unable to even imagine it, because only Xiaya had the mystical superpower to do it. At the same time the instant transmission was launched, a fragment of the universe's star chart that Porunga had placed in his brain appeared, and Xiaya promptly made a decision and chose an empty and spacious region to bring the Super Dragon Ball to. A vast expanse of darkness. There weren't any stars in its surroundings. The Milky Way galaxy and even other galaxies were extremely far from here, making it the most empty place in Universe 7. Suddenly, space distorted. A silver light flashed for a moment and a huge dark orange-red colored glass planet suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Who? Xiaya's face was pale as he quickly took out a breathing apparatus and took a deep breath of pure oxygen. Like humans, Saiyans could not leave a planet's atmosphere for very long. When the fresh oxygen entered his body, the dark suffocating feeling was completely dispersed, as if his heart and soul was bathed in warm sunshine, feeling extremely warm and comfortable. He breathed in a deep mouthful of air, and swiftly took out a senzu bean from space and ate it. The rich vitality smoothly and silently displayed its effectiveness, enabling him to fully recover. Looking at the extremely gigantic Dragon Ball, Xiaya smiled, and the raging ki enveloped him once again. I didn't think that it would take more than 10 minutes just to transport a Super Dragon Ball, but I've finally moved it over. Well, Universe 7 still has 3 more left, then I still have to go to Universe 6. Xiaya inwardly pondered, knowing that the 7 Super Dragon Balls were scattered throughout the Universe 6 and 7. Currently, there were 4 in Universe 7, and 3 in Universe 6. Every time a wish is fulfilled, the 7 Super Dragon Balls would once again be randomly scattered throughout the 2 universes. After resting for a while, Xiaya took out the Dragon Ball radar and once again continued his journey. A few hours later, 2 more Super Dragon Balls were successfully moved over. The 3 giant Dragon Balls were lined up in an orderly fashion in space, and the dark orange celestial objects began to produce a roaring buzzing sound when they were placed together. Chapter 134, Universe 6. After gathering 3 of the Super Dragon Balls, Xiaya paused briefly before beginning to look for the last Dragon Ball in Universe 7. According to the description in original work, the last Super Dragon Ball in Universe 7 was a 4-star ball. It was located in a hyperspace within a higher dimension, and was covered in a thick layer of universe dust. It looked like a solid wandering planet. Relying on both his memory and detection from the Dragon Ball radar in his hand as well as combined with Porunga's universe star chart, it took Xiaya quite a lot of time to search for it. He finally found the last Super Dragon Ball in a strange and remote space. Because of age, the surface of the Dragon Ball was covered with a thick layer of dust, and its surface was dotted with uneven and regularly scattered impact craters, both large and small. If it wasn't for the Dragon Ball radar, which clearly showed that it was a Dragon Ball, he would have thought it was an ordinary planet. This is the last Dragon Ball in Universe 7. It was really easy to find. Xiaya's face revealed a faint smile, as he floated in space while carrying oxygen equipment with him. Immediately, he flipped his palm and a light blue-colored energy wave was condensed. The energy wave bounced around within his hand, before it rumbled in the direction of the Super Dragon Ball, dragging a light blue light trail. Kaka! Kaka! Sounds in space could naturally not be transmitted, so it was impossible to hear the sound of the energy waves rumbling towards the surface of the planet. However, it could be seen with the naked eye that the surface of the rock-covered planet suddenly collapsed at the moment of contact, with the dust and rocks beginning to fiercely disperse. The whole rocky planet seemed to tremble. Soon a fissure suddenly split open on the surface of the planet. Gradually, more and more fissures appeared, until they were literally everywhere on the planet's surface. Boom! Finally, the planet could no longer withstand the bombardment of such immense energy. The planet exploded, and revealed a orange-red-colored glass ball. 4 gilded scarlet stars could also be seen. No matter from what angle, they looked colorful and shiny. Sure enough, just like in the original work, it is the 4-star ball. After moving this one, all the Super Dragon Balls from Universe 7 would be gathered. Looking at the Dragon Ball that was emitting a glorious sheen, Xiaya smiled with happiness. Repeating what he did with the others with the help of instant transmission, the enormous Dragon Ball was moved, costing tremendous efforts. The 4th Super Dragon Ball was assembled together along with the other Dragon Balls. Clapping his hands, he moved back to a certain distance. In the vast darkness of the universe, the 4 enormous Dragon Balls looked spectacular when placed together. Next, Xiaya had to consider how to travel to Universe 6 to collect the remaining 3 Dragon Balls. After thinking about it, Xiaya heaved a sigh. There's no other way, it seems in order to travel to Universe 6, I have to set out from the sacred world of the Kai. Although powerful, instant transmission could not take him across the barrier between the 2 universes. Xiaya clearly knew that if he wanted to go to Universe 6, he had to find a way from the sacred world of the Kai. Because sacred world of the Kai was practically at the center of Universe 7. From there, which was at a higher place, it was possible to observe the entire Universe 7. Perhaps he could find clues on how to travel to Universe 6 from there. Of course, the God of Destruction's planet also had the same function. It was just that Beerus slumbered there, and Xiaya really didn't want to come in contact with the God of Destruction again. In comparison, he'd much rather go to sacred world of the Kai. As a fleeting beam of light flashed, Xiaya's figure suddenly blurred and soon disappeared from space. The moment he appeared, he was in Universe 7's higher dimension. Sacred world of the Kai. Numerous stars rotated around a divine planet. In front of him was the prairie just like before, endless, distant, divine. An elegant verdant aura assaulted him, and a tranquil fragrance permeated in the air. This was Xiaya's second time on the sacred world of the Kai. Once he landed, he immediately converged all his aura. He was sneaking in illegally, after all. He absolutely could not provoke Kibito and the East Supreme Kai, or else it would truly be a hassle. On the slope of a mountain, surrounded by small randomly scattered saplings, Xiaya was leaning against a not-so-large pine tree while Universe 7's star chart floated in his mind. Faintly using his space-time ability, he slowly searched for the breach to Universe 6. Sacred World of the Kai was at the highest point in the entire universe, and thereby also the closest place between the 2 different universes. Here, it was easier to detect the neighboring universe's crystal wall. Slowly, time passed. It seemed like there would be success. Suddenly, he caught an abnormal aura. A bright light flashed in his mind, and Xiaya suddenly opened his eyes in surprise and continued to search for that same aura. As his consciousness continued to deeply probe around, the star chart of Universe 6 in his mind began to grow clearer and clearer. Xiaya's black eyes sparkled with bright colors, and his lips rose slightly, finally revealing a faint smile. Let me find the breach. Xiaya heaved a sigh of relief, and reached up to wipe the sweat dripping from his forehead. His mood good, he released his energy once again. Then, following the star chart of Universe 7 with Sacred World of the Kai as a raised shutter, his consciousness broke through the crystal wall between universes and entered Universe 6. Finally, he discovered the location of Universe 6. Huo! After a brief flash of light, Xiaya suddenly disappeared again from the Sacred World of the Kai, leaving Universe 7. Universe 6, Xianya Galaxy. This was a large-scale galaxy similar in many ways to the Milky Way galaxy. It was made up of an innumerable amount of large and small stars, and even more planets and comets. For a long time, it has produced numerous resplendent and glorious universe civilizations. In a binary star system formed of 2 stars, more than a dozen medium-sized planets emitted a colorful luster. Xiaya quietly stood in the space and looked in surprise. The sight in front of him was a little familiar. In the universe, there were not many galaxies that looked so similar, and there were also many binary star systems. Planet Selma, where he executed his first mission in his childhood, was in a binary star system. Planet Namek was located in a triple star system. This was Universe 6, it didn't seem to look much different from Universe 7. Of course, Universe 6 and Universe 7 that Xiaya lives in are both classified as twin universes, so all of the planets were basically located at more or less the same position. At this time, he also saw an icy blue planet, similar in size to Planet Hongshan Companion's star, Planet Myshan. There possibly could be living beings residing there. Upon thinking of this, Xiaya couldn't help but want to take a look. A beam of light flashed and he flew directly towards the icy blue planet. Upon entering its atmosphere, he quickly discovered signs of a town on the land. This was a town with simple and unsophisticated style, resembling somewhat to the European medieval architectural style of Earth. Xiaya's heart was invigorated. It seemed like this was a life planet. Moreover, after observing the buildings' characteristics and the actual size of the towns, he knew that it was a planet with a primitive civilization. However, to his disappointment, the towns he saw, although were not small, they were deserted. It was a desolate sight, and the rare few pedestrians were running around in a hurry. The atmosphere didn't look too good. The inhabitants of the planet were a demi-human race, physically similar to humans. However, their skin was purple, and they didn't have any ear flaps. Chapter 135, Universe King. What happened here? Xiaya walked over and pulled a person aside, using a language translation device developed by the Fadiyas to communicate. This device could project his thoughts into the brains of other people via brain waves, thus achieving his goal of communication. The aboriginal was incredibly terrified. After being pulled aside by Xiaya, it became really agitated and wildly flailed its limbs. It took a good deal of time before Xiaya learned that this plane was called Planet Ice, and the people who lived here were called Lumiran. They were rather ordinary and a fairly peaceful race. If you wanted to describe their living habits, it was a bit like the Earthlings from his past life. They were the type of people who exploited the environment for the sake of development. However, once they realized they were destroying the ecological system, they began to rein themselves in order to survive, wage war against different countries, and promote for peace when war spreads everywhere. In short, in the Lumirans, Xiaya saw a resemblance of the Earthlings from his past life. The only difference was that there was the existence of martial arts on the planet. And right now, the pitiful Lumiran were under attack by a universe king known as Orn. Currently, everyone on the entire planet was fleeing as far as they could to avoid this calamity. Xiaya was speechless after finding out about the situation on the planet. He could clearly see that this planet was only inhabited by a low-level civilization, which meant that it was impossible for them to have spaceship technology, which also meant that these people could only flee to somewhere on the planet. Could it be that the being called Orn was planning to destroy them all one by one? How come then people weren't resisting? Just like as he had seen in the movies of his previous life. Every time a worldwide disaster struck, cities would be turned upside down, extremely congested from escaping crowd, who would be running from the big cities into villages, and from villages into mountains. In fact, most don't even know where to escape to, they simply just follow the crowd to flee. Soon afterward, Xiaya found that the highest energy level on the planet was less than 500 battle power. While the alien attacking the planet had, close to 5,000 battle power. With such a great disparity in strength, it's no wonder these people here lost their morale. Xiaya shook his head helplessly. But the Lumirans sure have a good luck as they have met me. Seeing how you all look similar to Earthlings, I will take action and help you. Xiaya smiled faintly as he prepared to take action. This could be regarded as his first battle upon arriving in Universe 6. In the meantime, in the center of the city, the front lines were in complete ruins, with smoke and gunfire never ceasing. The resistance army of Planet Ice was fighting against Orn's subordinate aliens. The gunfire rumbled and smoke filled the sky. However, the situation was deteriorating in a one-sided manner. Their weapons did nothing against the energy attacks, and so the resistance army was not a match for the aliens at all. The aliens' battle power was not high, only a little over several hundred, but it was enough to deal with these Planet Ice's ordinary demi-humans. The aliens only had to casually fire a few energy blasts, and they could blow up their fortifications, killing masses of people. The disparity was so large, they practically couldn't retaliate at all. "General Darius, our gunfire is ineffective against the aliens," an officer shouted towards their general at the side with an expression of grief and indignation. "MHM." General Darius grunted, nodding his face with a grave expression while the cold light from his face could even produce ice and frost. He suddenly asked, "How is the situation on Master Kurla's side?" Master Kurla was the most powerful martial arts master on planet Ice. His disciples were all over the planet, and he was the sole hope of the Lumirens, who would decide their victory or defeat. The officer's expression froze before he hurriedly replied, "Master Kurla attacked the aliens' stronghold with his disciples not long ago. He successfully killed several hundred of the aliens, but in the end, the aliens chose to die in mutual destruction. Many of his disciples were seriously injured. As long as Master Kurla is okay, it's fine." General Darius' expression tightened as he heaved a sigh. Who could have thought that their strength would reach such a level? These aliens are seriously much too powerful. If their civilization wanted to survive on planet Ice, then they must destroy the invading aliens. But they were too powerful, and the legendary Universe King, Orn, had not even attacked yet. Who knew how powerful it actually was? Thinking of the dark and hazy future of planet Ice and its people, General Darius' face was covered in dark clouds. "General Darius, quickly look at the screen. A mysterious person seems to be attacking the alien stronghold." The officer beside him suddenly shouted loudly, while excitedly pointing at the scene shown on the screen. What appeared on the screen was a human who looked 80 to 90% like the Lumirens. Taken by surprise, General Darius noticed that the man did not rely on external force and was floating directly in the sky. He was moving gracefully across the air as if he was merely taking a stroll in a courtyard. His arms lightly danced, and countless tiny earth-shattering energy sprinkled out in a dense drizzle. Do, the drizzles fell from the sky, and sparkling lusters suddenly glittered down from the sky. A natural drizzle would normally silently moisten any objects it touches, but this energy drizzle killed without spilling any blood. Silently, all the aliens within the fortress were riddled like a sieve. Frightening, this was seriously too frightening. General Darius and the other soldiers on the side looked on in horror. Immediately afterwards, a scene was projected from the display screen. It was a dark and profound gaze, like a sharp sword. It passed through the display screen and pierced into General Darius' heart. All the people in the resistance army were immediately frightened by the sword-like gaze, their complexion becoming deathly pale and their lungs heaved heavily for air. Then, they witnessed the person in the screen smile faintly before vanishing. "Quickly, find out who that man is, and send someone to the scene to investigate the situation of alien fortification immediately." General Darius' voice reverberated throughout the underground. He had a feeling that this man who resembled the Lumirens was the hope of planet Ice and its people. "Yes, sir." The officer next to him answered loudly and hurriedly went out to arrange the personnel. After his assistant left, General Darius turned his attention to the screen once again, staring at it with a gleaming and penetrating gaze. Even though the screen was empty, General Darius was filled with endless daydreams. A mysterious expert had suddenly appeared right when planet Ice was going through a matter of life and death. Perhaps it was a favor from the gods. They could only place their beautiful hopes on this. On the other side of planet Ice. Before General Darius' subordinates could arrive, Xiaya teleported away, heading straight for the flying space fortress of the so-called Universe King, Orn. The flying space fortress stayed within the stratosphere, and was a disc-shaped medium-sized ship. Upon seeing it, Xiaya lost all interest. So, it turned out that this so-called Universe King Orn was an alien whose battle power did not even exceed 5,000. He wasn't an expert who Xiaya thought had deliberately restrained his aura. In the end, he was only a small bandit who along with his subordinates was acting like a tyrant in this remote galaxy. Such a person could only be a squad leader in the Frisia Corps, nothing more. He actually dared to call himself the Universe King. Seeing this, Xiaya couldn't help but found their ignorance a bit ridiculous, while raging for having to make such a fruitless trip. Frisia's Universe Emperor was a much more convincing name. These monkeys actually had the guts to proclaim themselves to be king of the mountain while the tiger was away. This minuscule amount of battle power could only be flaunted in this remote region. If they went to the central area, they wouldn't even know when they would be slapped to death by someone. Chapter 136, Compa's Delicious Food. As Xiaya was observing the spaceship, the cabin door suddenly opened and a tall man flew out before Xiaya and arrogantly shouted, without waiting for him to speak. "Who are you, and why are you standing in front of my spaceship?" Haven't you heard of my name, Universe King Orn? Universe King? Xiaya asked in surprise. That's right, I am the Universe King, Orn. You don't look like someone from this planet. You better be sensible, and immediately leave this place. Orn, seeing that the other could fly freely in the sky, was somewhat apprehensive in his heart and wanted to drive him away to prevent any unnecessary troubles. But after many years of living like a king, however, made him unconsciously speak in an arrogant and bossy tone. Perhaps. In his mind, he didn't think much of the little brat before him. Universe King? How ignorant of this person to give himself such a nickname. Xiaya shook his head and sternly said to Orn, I have to say, you are really lucky to have been able to live up to this point. How many strong experts were there in the universe? It was really a miracle that he could live so arrogantly up until now. Boy, are you courting death? Orn was livid. As he spoke, he began to gather his technique and prepared to send this small brat on his way. Upon seeing this, Xiaya once again shook his head. This Orn didn't even know how to grasp an opportunity. Even when he is attacking, he needs to take so much time to execute his technique. Sure enough, after being so used to acting high and mighty, he no longer understood the importance of opportunities. This kind of fighting method was really too primitive and quite unoriginal. AI, what uncivilized region have I come to? Immediately, he lost interest in tangling with him. He intended to quickly dispose of this annoyance named Universe King. Naturally, destroying Orn and his spaceship could be taken care of in seconds. Such a minor matter would naturally not be taken seriously. Once the decision was made, Orn's fate was determined. Therefore, he casually threw out an energy wave strong enough to destroy a continent. Without giving it another glance, Xiaya directly left. Shortly after Xiaya left, the energy wave hit the ship and an explosion like extremely dazzling fireworks decorated the sky. This was the end of Universe King Orn, Planet Ice's numerous living beings' menace. Even till the end, he never even knew who killed him. Not long afterwards, General Darius and his subordinates who received the news quickly rushed over and witnessed the ship's wreckage crashed onto the ground. They were beside themselves from excitement. The Universe King Orn's sudden death caused the aliens to panic, while the Lumirans became greatly motivated. In an instant, the resistance against the invading aliens began to progress triumphantly. In the most distant part of Universe 6. In a bizarre space where dark purple lightning flashed and thunder rolled. Several large celestial bodies were moving slowly along their course amidst the deep clouds and mist. At the center, atop a rhombus-shaped celestial body was an enormous and withered tree. The tree was quite large and the rhombus celestial body looked like its bonsai pot. However, there were innumerable lakes and mountains scattered above it. On the side of a lake was a grass field in which a green figure was sitting on the ground. The person had long silver-gray hair and around its neck was a floating ring of light. From her curvaceous body, it was clearly a woman. At this moment, the woman was holding a scepter in her hand whilst staring at the crystal ball above with a wisp of a smile on her calm face. The crystal ball was showing her everything Xiaya had done from the moment he arrived on Universe 6 until he left Planet Ice. Xiaya's each and every move was being monitored by the woman. Xiaya, who would have thought that someone could come over from Universe 7? Something like this hasn't happened in many years. But based on his conduct, he doesn't seem like an evil person. So, I will let him be. The woman softly smiled as if everything was under control. She had no other reaction towards Xiaya, this intruder. Henceforth, like watching a movie, she continued to observe, full of interest. At this time, a purple figure came running over from far away along the shore of the lake. It was a fat person with long ears, who looked naive and innocent yet also somewhat comical. Holding a plump bird egg in his hands, he hopped over to the woman's side. Vados, look, just now I found the egg of a barren bird. Hey, quickly cook it for me. The fat person pleaded while holding onto a large egg in his hands, face full of longing. Kampa-sama, you again secretly ran over to the mortal world. Didn't I tell you last time that you could only eat one barren bird egg per year? If you keep doing this so often, the barren birds will quickly become extinct. If that happens, it would be a problem if I couldn't eat it anymore. While holding her head, Vados looked at the unruly Kampa-sama in front of her and said. This fat purple being was precisely Universe 6's god of destruction, the twin brother of Universe 7's god of destruction, Beerus. Similar to Beerus, Kampa's nature was also capricious. It could be said that they were worthy to be called twin brothers. They were both unruly, haughty, aloof, and extremely arrogant. However, compared to Beerus, Kampa's temperament was much more simple. As long as someone did not ruffle his feathers, he was basically a dumb child, incredibly gullible. As the god of destruction, besides doing his job, his biggest hobby was to try delicious foods. But compared to Beerus, who was picky about his food, Kampa's standards were much lower. Just a barren bird's egg was sufficient to satisfy him. Vados, just this once, please cook it for me. The barren bird's egg is really delicious, the god of destruction. Kampa licked his lips and gazed at her expectantly. Kampa-sama, I really don't know what to do with you. Vados shook her head and stood up to satisfy Kampa's demands. After all, she had to listen to the god of destruction's words. Hence, she extended her slender finger and pointed it in the void. The barren bird's huge egg in Kampa's hand immediately floated up and fell into her hands. The barren bird was a prehistoric bird from some planet in the mortal world. When it becomes an adult, it would have extraordinary energy attacks. Its egg was very big, like an ostrich's, with its surface wrapped in a layer of thick eggshell. Actually, the taste of the egg after being thoroughly boiled could only be said to be so-so. It was just so-so among the food in the mortal world. However, Vados would naturally never tell this to Kampa. So long as Kampa-sama eat these, it would be enough. Otherwise, he would put on weight again. Such a big barren bird's egg is very rare. Vados shook the heavy bird egg and raised her head at Kampa, asking, would Kampa-sama like to eat it boiled or fried? Is there a difference? Kampa tilted his head. He wasn't very bright, and besides eating, he doesn't even have any cooking skills, so he was unable to differentiate between the two options. Without much thinking, Kampa bit his finger and urged, whatever, just make it tasty. Then, as usual, I will boil the egg. Kampa-sama, please wait a while. Boiling the egg was the simplest method for make it. A smile appeared at the corners of Vados' mouth. Then, she gracefully waved her scepter and began her task. The crystal ball above the scepter suddenly flickered and a full cooking set appeared in front of her, as if a dimensional space door had opened up. Vados lifted a cauldron, filled it with water, lit the firewood, and waited for the water to boil. Without any seasoning, she directly threw the bird egg inside. Soon, the egg was thoroughly boiled. Kampa hurriedly scooped out the egg, peeled its eggshell and quickly took a big mouthful out of it. While chewing, he exclaimed in a loud voice, "Hey Vados, this is the most delicious food I've ever eaten. That guy Beerus surely has no chance to eat something like this. Hee, shall we go over and annoy him?" Hearing what he said, Vados held her forehead and slightly raised the corner of her eyes. She thought inwardly in her heart, I'm afraid when the time comes, it would you Kampa-sama who will be annoyed. Chapter 137, Vados interferes. As she thought of this, Vados was certain she couldn't let Kampa run over to Universe 7 to seek out Beerus to show off, or else the cat would be out of the bag. Hence, after thinking for a moment, she narrowed her eyes and said, Kampa-sama, that's not a good idea. Our barren birds here are nearly extinct. If Kampa-sama took the delicious barren eggs over to Universe 7, we would have even fewer left to eat. Instead we should hide this delicious food, and not let anyone know. Vados patiently suggested. Is that so? Kampa's eyes widened, his golden irises glimmering in thought. After thinking for a while, he finally seemed to figure something out. He clapped his hands and burst out into laughter while throwing out his chest. Right Vados, what you say is correct. I shouldn't reveal such delicious things to others. It is only right that I enjoy it alone. Barren birds were becoming more and more scarce. This kind of delicious food could only be eaten by him. Kampa couldn't help but be pleased with himself in his heart. Seeing that Kampa-sama was so easily deceived by her, Vados covered her lips and softly smiled. Then, she prepared to send Kampa-sama back to sleep. Although Vados was the attendant of God of Destruction Kampa, she has too, however, spent most of her time acting like a nanny. Kampa's mentality was such which made him much easier to fool than Beerus. Without wasting much breath, Vados' strategy succeeded. After Kampa smugly ran off to sleep, Vados revealed a faint smile on her delicate face before sweeping her scepter at the ground. The cooking utensils along with the garbage magically disappeared. Then she lifted the edge of her dress and sat down on the ground, continuing to watch the situation down in the mortal world. The scepter in her hand flashed, and once again the crystal ball began to show scenes of the mortal world. Oh! Vados softly exclaimed. This time, she observed the human that came from Universe 7 moving a planet-sized dark orange glass bead. In this scene, Xiaya was floating in space, and then he whispered. A bright white sheen suddenly flashed out of nowhere, and it wrapped around the huge crystal star, pulling it through space and disappearing. He appears to have some traces of a space-time ability. A strange light flashed through her bright eyes. It had been thousands of years since a glimmer of surprise flashed on Veto's calm face. But it was only surprise, nothing more. Interesting, I didn't think that this little human had mastered such a power. She had experienced an innumerable amount of years and witnessed many great shifts in eras, so what kind of characters has she not seen? Xiaya showing his ability merely made her a little bit interested, nothing more. But that huge orange bead seems to be the wishing beads created by Dragon God Zamala. I heard that using those beads, any wish could be fulfilled. Is his purpose of coming from Universe 7 is to collect these wishing beads? Vados whispered in a voice that only she could hear. Immediately, she seemed to have thought of something as a bright smile blossomed on her calm face, and brilliant colors flashed across her light blue-green eyes. The wishing beads, however, are objects of Universe 6. If it was so easy for the people of Universe 7 to take them away, and if Kompasama found out about it, he would definitely be extremely angry. Let me increase the difficulty level. As she spoke, she wielded the scepter in her hand, and lightly tapped it towards the ground several times. Do, the scepter didn't actually touch the grass field, but rather tapped in the void. Tiny unclear ripples immediately undulated along the fabrics of space like a pebble was suddenly dropped in a calm lake, causing concentric smooth ripples to appear. In the mortal world, Xiaya took out the new Dragon Ball radar to find the whereabouts of the next Dragon Ball, unaware that he was already under the radar of the most frightening existence of Universe 6. Suddenly, the bright dots representing the remaining 2 Super Dragon Balls in the radar flickered. Immediately afterwards, they disappeared from the radar screen, and again appeared. However, their positions had changed. A minor shift in location could only mean that it was countless galaxies away from its original location. The Super Dragon Balls could not change their position for no reason, and especially not move countless galaxies all at once. Xiaya noticed this situation and his eyes furrowed slightly. What is going on? Is the Dragon Ball radar malfunctioning? If the Dragon Ball radar was malfunctioning, he would have to return to Universe 7 and ask the Fate Ayahs to repair it. This would not only be time-consuming, but it would also increase the chances of being discovered in the sacred world of the Kai as he traveled to and fro. Right now, he was still extremely weak. It is extremely dangerous to enter and leave the sacred world of Kai. He couldn't get exposed. Pa. His palm patted the Dragon Ball radar. Seeing that it had no effect, he could only press the restart button on the radar and have it restart. Generally speaking, a restart is the most effective measure as long as it wasn't a hardware issue. Only this time, he was disappointed. When the radar restarted, he was surprised to find that not only had the Dragon Ball radar not returned to normal, but the bright dots on the screen actually changed from 2 to 1. The other Super Dragon Ball's signal was gone. This problem was really serious. His eyebrows tightened even more as he puzzled over this issue. Why did an abnormality occur to the perfectly fine Dragon Ball's signal? Looks like the radar is really malfunctioning. Forget it, let's first take a look at the place which radar had displayed. If there is no Dragon Ball there, then the radar is definitely broken. Deciding on this course of action, Xiaya prepared to teleport to the location shown on the radar. In any case, he had instant transmission among his repertoire, so he wouldn't be wasting too much time to take a look. This way he could also determine whether or not it really was a radar malfunction. Hence, he closed his eyes and concentrated. The star chart of Universe 6 appeared vividly in his mind, and he was just about to activate instant transmission. All of a sudden, the universe space stirred, and an indescribable ripple swept towards him like a monstrous wave, breaking him out of the instant transmission state. This energy, it's the manipulation of space-time. Feeling the attribute of this power, Xiaya's complexion turned somber. Now, how could he not know that he had come across someone's scheme, and moreover, that person was also an expert in manipulating space-time ability? Universe 6 actually has such a person. Xiaya's expression was uncertain. His ability to control space-time was the strongest trump card he had in his hands. He would never use it very easily. If it was exposed, it would lose its effectiveness. It would be quite a wonder if his mood would still be good. The purpose of that person seems to be only to prevent me from using instant transmission. Nothing else. Why is he/she acting like this? Puzzled, he was startled when a soft voice rang beside his ear. The universe space could not transmit sound, but this sound was like a wave that was directly transmitted to his brain. Youngster, you who have come from Universe 7. Not only did you enter without permission, you also stole things from my Universe 6, not to mention without coming by to even say hello. This is not okay. The 2 remaining wishing beads, I've transferred them away. If you have the ability to find them, then I will give them to you. Also, I have blocked the space-time ability within your body for a month. This is your punishment for stealing. Perform well, youngster from the Universe 7. When the voice vanished, the illusory feeling dispersed from his mind. Xiaya knitted his eyebrows together and tried to invoke the power of space-time in his body, but there was no reaction. Just as the mysterious female voice said, his space-time ability was sealed. Xiaya was silent as a shocked expression flashed across his face. Looking at the current situation, that person didn't seem to harbor malice towards him. Otherwise, it wouldn't be just as simple as sealing his space-time ability. After coming to this simple conclusion, Xiaya wondered who the mysterious female's voice belonged to. He only has little knowledge about Universe 6, only that it is the twin universe with Universe 7 where he lives. Beside planets and races, everything here was different. Chapter 138, Bofei Trading Center. The lack of information caused Xiaya to be unable to come to a conclusion on what the identity of the mysterious person was. Naturally, there were probably many powerful women in Universe 6, but not only does this woman knows that he was from Universe 7, but she was also able to easily seal his space-time ability. This person's identity in Universe 6 was probably not simple. According to all this information, he can narrow down the range of people in his mind. Suddenly, a person's data flashed through Xiaya's mind, causing him to furrow his eyebrows. Could it be her? The attendant of Universe 6's god of destruction, Angel Vados. Was that her voice just now? The strongest woman in Universe 6 was undoubtedly the god of destruction's attendant Angel Vados. Xiaya feels that his guess is pretty close because only she has the extraordinary ability to instantly move 2 planet-sized Super Dragon Balls. Not to mention the fact she easily sealed his space-time ability just like she said she would. But on second thought, if that voice was really hers, then he was in for some serious trouble. Her identity was really special. She was Universe 7's older sister, and could similarly also manipulate space-time. She may seem harmless to both humans and animals, but her strength was unfathomable. I would never have imagined that an existence of her level would ever pay attention to me. Thinking of this, Xiaya could not help but gave a wry smile. Normally, the beings who could reach the power levels of the gods of destruction like Beerus and Kampa, or their attendants Whis and Vados, would pay very little attention to the universe. They were simply aloof observers who were detached from the universe. Even if a galaxy was being destroyed, or dark forces were expanding, it would only seem like an opening cinematic shown in a game to them. Simply not worth mentioning. With regards to people like them, as long as you weren't unlucky enough to run into them, they would basically ignore your existence. The most obvious gap between people and gods is that people are troubled with secular value judgment, judging things as right or wrong, good or bad. Gods on the other hand, treat all beings equally. As the saying goes, children only see right and wrong, while adults only look at pros and cons. Heaven and earth are ruthless, treating myriad creatures as straw dogs. Neither good or evil, treating everyone unfairly, this is the realm of gods. For a god at the level of the god of destructions, everyone's right to die is equal. Well, at least for him. Whoever offends him has to die, with no exception. Xiaya had been really cautious from the moment he entered Universe 6. He was very low-key other than the time he destroyed the so-called Universe King. This was because he was afraid of attracting attention from people such as the Supreme Kai. In the end, he only managed to nab 1 Super Dragon Ball. Although he was not noticed by the Kais or Supreme Kais, he still attracted attention from Universe 6's most powerful being. What the hell? Fortunately, Vados didn't seem to have any malicious intentions towards him. This was something that he was quite glad about. If Vados wanted to harm him, he could do nothing to resist. In actuality, Vados' behavior just now revealed that she really didn't mind that he was taking the Super Dragon Balls, but she just didn't want him to take them easily. By moving the Dragon Balls and sealing his space-time ability, the difficulty level for him to accomplish his goal was increased. Xiaya expects that the next 2 Super Dragon Balls would not be easy to take away. Of course, being tested by Vados was not a bad thing at all. At least he got the approval of the strongest person of Universe 6 to seek out the Super Dragon Balls. He was now a justified Dragon Ball seeker. Even if he met the Kai or the Supreme Kai of Universe 6, he could straighten his back and speak boldly about his purpose of being here. Now, I just have to figure out a way to get through this month. It's nearly impossible for him to look for a Super Dragon Ball when instant transmission could not be used, because such a far distance was daunting, and would cause anyone to despair. But fortunately for him, he was prepared when he came here. He picked out a hoi poi capsule from his bag, opened the lid, and threw it out. Bang! A gust of smoke lingered in space, and was quickly dispersed by the vacuum. A small silver-grey ship appeared out of nowhere in the space. Fortunately, I brought this spaceship with me. Otherwise I would be drifting around in the universe. He chuckled before hurriedly getting into the ship. He removed his oxygen equipment and took a deep breath of the ship-generated oxygen. It felt completely different. The spaceship was both small and exquisite. Its frame was not big, only a few tens of meters in length. If he didn't have the ship with him, it would certainly be difficult for him to survive the next month. At this time, Xiaya could not help but curse inwardly. Did that Vados even consider the fact how an ordinary human could survive without food or drink, and last without oxygen for a month? I'm afraid that I would have suffocated to death long ago. It was probable that she didn't even consider a mortal's life, as there were too many of them. They were likely just numbers in her eyes. Forget it. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. It wasn't like he could possibly go and argue with Vados. On the radar, there is only one Dragon Ball signal still there. Let's head in that direction first. Deciding this, he inputted the command into the ship's smart computer, enabling it to proceed in the direction of Dragon Ball's location. A slight deviation in the Dragon Ball radar was actually a distance of several galaxies. If I am to use the ship to proceed in this direction, it would likely take me more than 10 years to fly there. Xiaya PNLY wants to quickly pass the time. 1 month later, he would use instant transmission to travel there in one go. 15 galaxies away from Xiaya. Universe 6, Milky Way Galaxy. Artificial stars were linked together to form a series of giant formidable fortresses which had an impenetrable defense. The majestic interstellar fortresses was both sinister and frightening, all built using a super alloy, and were dotted all over with cannons everywhere on its surface. The thick black muzzles of the cannons were so large and powerful that with all of them combined, even aliens who had the battle power of tens of thousands didn't dare to act rashly. This was the interstellar trading market of the Universe Commerce Alliance. The Universe Commerce Alliance was a super alliance that could be found throughout Universe 6. Here, experts were many, each controlling a powerful force. The alliance was huge, and whether the forces were of justice or evil, they were all inextricably linked with it. Universe mercenaries could receive missions here. Justice organizations could purchase weapons here while evil forces could even sell planets. In short, this was a super force where fishes and dragons mixed together. Wealth moves people's hearts, and interest can bring all kinds of forces together, and ultimately form an alliance. The composition of the Universe Commerce Alliance was extremely complex. As long as business could be done, it would be done, regardless of whether it was dark and evil or bright and good. As long as there was business that could be done, it would not be rejected. Therefore, the Alliance have auctions, have interstellar express delivery, and even have assassination, mercenary, and planet trafficking organizations. A similar organization naturally exists in Universe 7 too. The Commerce Alliance in Universe was an existence that was also spread throughout the entire universe, similar to Universe 6. When compared to this giant alliance, the Galactic Patrol which was in charge of the Milky Way Galaxy was like a mouse in front of an elephant. Their strength was on an entirely different level. Even Frisia and the other members of the Frost Demons whose mere mention of a name could frighten everyone, had to conduct transactions in a fair and just manner, paying close attention to the so-called contractual obligations. Of course, in order for everything to be fair, the Commerce Alliance had to have powerful forces and have enough experts who could destroy everything in one thunderous attack. They have enough military forces to suppress the people who do not abide by the rules, and it was the biggest source of confidence for the Commerce Alliance. Bophi Trading Center, one of the several trading centers of the Alliance that was stationed in the Milky Way Galaxy of Universe 6. It was formed by 3 solid planets, where practically anything could be traded. The one in charge of the trading center was an alien called Bophi, an unfathomable figure in the Milky Way Galaxy. On the outskirts of the Bophi Trading Center, various kinds of advanced spaceships were moving along in an endless stream, but when they want to enter the inner circle, they had replaced their spaceships with small-sized ships. Only then they can enter. They could strut around as they please on their respective planets, but when they arrived to the Bofei trading center, they had to rein in their haughtiness and tuck their tail between their legs. These aliens were all rushing over to trade, selling planets and slaves. They sought to acquire planets and all kinds of resources. But without exceptions, they all had to follow the rules set by the Bofei trading center. At this time, Hualala! A slight trembling came out of nowhere, and the dark space suddenly rippled. Immediately after, the trembling grew and grew until it spanned from a speck to an entire area. The pitch-dark night sky suddenly began to boil like hot water. A tear was suddenly forcibly opened in the space and a deep dark crack abruptly split open. Then, under everyone's terrified gaze, a giant dark orange planet emerged from the crack. Oh my god, what the hell is that? A huge planet suddenly appeared in the space. Look at that thing, it seems to have strange star symbols on its surface. Could it be some kind of treasure? Would that thing be auctioned? I want to get it, no I must get it. Looking at the huge glass crystal ball that emerged from the crack in space, all the aliens present had their mouths wide open while trying to guess what this thing was. Several clever people already began making plans for the crystal planet. However, in the end, this place was Bofei Trading Center. If they want to take it away for free, it was unlikely that this trading center's agent Sir Bofei would agree. Quick, someone go and inform Sir Bofei. Also send some people to keep a watch on this mysterious planet. Don't let anyone come near it. The guards on the trading center quickly reacted and hurriedly ordered the surrounding subordinates. One by one, the aliens subordinate to the trading center took action and quickly drove away the large amount of merchants and solo travelers moving to and fro. Since this thing suddenly appeared within the trading center, then it was Sir Bofei's property. Only Sir Bofei had the final say on how to deal with it, no one else should even think of getting an advantage. This was an unshakable rule, and also a rule set down by Sir Bofei. People who came to the trading center naturally understood this ironclad rule. If it didn't touch upon a core interest, they would certainly not want to provoke the powerful Sir Bofei because of some unknown thing. Chapter 139, Father and Two Sons. Bofei Trading Center, Main Star. This was a planet that managed to retain most of its original appearance after undergoing technological transformation. Simultaneously, it was also the venue for conducting trading centers auctions, as well as the place where the great Sir Bofei resides. All trades on the scale, from trading planets to trading large amounts of slaves, were carried out here. Since Sir Bofei was such a mighty existence, no one dared to be unbridled on the main star. At this time, in Sir Bofei's palace, magnificent rainbow-like colors illuminated the surroundings as if it was daytime. Inside the palace hall, there was singing and dancing to extol the good times and beautiful dancers gracefully dancing along with the music. In front of the palace hall was a long dining table with the length of 10 meters. Sumptuous food was piled on top like a small hill. But, what was incongruous with the beautiful scenery was that a giant burly fellow taller than 5 meters was leaning over the table, and with total disregard to the performances in the hall, was crudely and loudly doing his own thing and devouring the food. Grabbing the food in front of him, he stuffed it into his mouth, loudly chewed and swallowed it. To his side, were two slightly younger men who were also gorging themselves with food. The three people were Trading Center's agent Bofei and his two sons. Currently they were enjoying a banquet. Bofei was a large burly alien with a height of more than 5 meters. His crimson skin was covered with scales, with 4 eyes and 3 long brown longhorns decorating his head. His scalp was full of wrinkles like Captain Jinyu. Regarding his 4 eyes, 2 were closed while 2 were open. The 2 deep blue pupils in his opened eyes flickered with a cold light like a viper. His height exceeds an ordinary person's height, making him look extremely intimidating while his whole body was radiating with threatening vigor. Father, in several days, there will be another auction. We'll be able to make a big fortune again. Sitting to the side, the older son Boku wiped his mouth and spoke with a smiling expression on his face. His body was slightly smaller than his father, Bofei. At the moment, his whole face was brimming with excitement. Ha ha ha, yes, once again there will be plenty of pitiful lambs on the dining table for us. How many planets do you think will be traded this time around? Bofei put down the food his hand, his icy face revealing a wicked smile as he happily asked his 2 children. I think it should be around 100 planets. I heard that Rajiv recently attacked a lot of planets. Shijir also seems to have gotten a bumper harvest, so this time the number of transactions will certainly not be few. The oldest son Boku happily said. Yet, Bofiai was also in a good mood. No matter how the aliens made their deals, he would be able to collect a high agent fee from it, steadily making fortune from buying and selling A. Of course, the agent fee differed from person to person. If it was a regular customer or a person with relatively powerful strength, he would collect less. Father, you said before that you would give me 4 planets. You haven't fulfilled your promise yet. This time, I want to take 4 planets from the transaction. While Bofiai was in a good mood, his other son Bolton, discontentedly shouted. Take it, take it. Quit bringing it up every time. Look at how many planets I've already given to you, you always manage to destroy them after a few days. Bofiai waved his hand and gave up some of the planets in the trading center to his youngest son without any care. He then admonished loudly as if the trading goods were his own. Anyway, as the trading center's agent, Bofiai was local tyrant among the nearby starfields. Since he took over for trading center leader position from his predecessor, wouldn't this trading center be considered as his family business? As long as they hand over sufficient money to the Universe Commerce Alliance, they could care less about what the agents did in their governing areas. After all, the universe was a harsh place. The weak are merely prey to the strong. At this moment, a security guard hurried over and whispered in Bofiai's ear. After he finished listening, his face suddenly revealed astonishment, and he immediately waved away all the guards and dancers in the surroundings to go away. You, say that one more time. Bofiai stood up, and ordered in a strong and imposing voice. Yes, Sir Bofiai. The guard hurriedly nodded and said, just a little while ago, the space suddenly began to tremble before a giant crack split open in space. A huge crystal planet then emerged out of that big crack. The guard carefully explained what he had just witnessed. Bofiai and his 2 sons were all surprised when they heard the news. Bofiai's deep blue eyes flickered, glimmering with greed. Are you sure that the entire planet is made of crystal? Yes, Sir Bofiai, this subordinate saw it clearly. That planet is indeed completely made of crystal. Right, there are also a few strangely patterned stars inside the dark orange planet. The guard stood upright and loudly answered. Bofiai nodded lightly and turned to look at his 2 sons. He noticed that their eyes were also filled with greed, just like him. Nodding his head, he inwardly thought. They have really learned his core teachings, that all good things were one's own. Father, that planet is definitely a treasure. If we could auction it off, we would certainly make a huge profit. The oldest son Boku said with flashing eyes. The youngest son Bolton, however, said with dissatisfaction. How can such a treasure be auctioned? We have plenty of other methods to make money. As soon as we heard about this crystal planet, we knew that it was something incredibly rare. We should leave it in our own hands. There is no value in keeping it to ourselves. Boku shook his head and rejected the idea. It's better than giving it to someone else. Both Boku and Bolton expressed their opinions, neither giving in. Bofiai quietly observed his 2 quarreling sons as he stroked his chin, saying, quit arguing. Everything can wait until we actually see the crystal planet. If it's a treasure, we will either keep it to ourselves or auction it in exchange for something even more valuable. Bofiai made the final decision. Yes, father. Okay. Seeing that their father had already arrived to a decision, Boku and Bolton's anger dissipated and stopped quarreling. Both of them nodded in agreement. When it came to their father's decisions, both were incredibly obedient. In terms of being a father, Bofiai was obviously much more successful than King Cold. Bofiai nodded in satisfaction, quite pleased with his own influence over his sons. Then, the trio quickly departed from the main star in their own respective spacecraft, rushing towards the outskirts of the trading center, where the Super Dragon Ball appeared. Soon afterwards, the 3 spacecraft stopped at the outskirts and lined up near those artificial stars. From far away, the enormous Dragon Ball looked like an ordinary planet floating in space, causing the 3 of them to all reveal an expression of shock. Look, father, the crystal planet doesn't seem to have been formed naturally. It looks like it had been artificially polished. The older son Boku couldn't help but shudder in his heart and loudly shout. A naturally planet would never have such a perfectly symmetrical sphere shape, and it wouldn't have those gilded 5-pointed stars in the planet that looks beautifully structured seen from whatever angle. In addition, the gravity of the planet was extremely small. The crystal ball was certainly not simple. To be able to artificially polish a large planet, and also into a perfect sphere, the difficulty level was not ordinary. This is definitely a good treasure, we have to keep it. After seeing the Dragon Ball, Bolton's eyes practically released golden rays. He hurriedly warned his father, afraid that his father would auction it off. What the hell is this thing? Xiaya was lost in thought, carefully examining it. He beckoned the alien who had been in charge of watching over the crystal ball and asked, was the crystal ball seen by many people when it emerged? Yes sir Xiaya, when this mysterious planet appeared, there were many merchants and pedestrians going to and fro nearby. Although we drove them away without delay, the news should have already spread out. The alien replied and explained everything in full detail. Oh! Xiaya rubbed his chin, pondering. He then said, pass down my order. The auction will be postponed for 2 months. At that time, the crystal planet will be auctioned as the final product. Yes. The alien on the side received his order and withdrew. As for the adverse effects of postponing the auction, he didn't even bother to take into consideration. When the auction would be held, it was always entirely up to Sir Xiaya to have the final say. If he wanted to postpone it, then it would undoubtedly be postponed. If he allows the news to fully spread out and let many people receive the news, the earnings from the auction would be incredible. Chapter 140, 6th Dragon Ball. Don't, father. Do we really have to auction it off? Bolton was unwilling. If this crystal planet was given to him, it would absolutely be one of a kind. Xiaya replied, what Boku said is correct. This thing is definitely not naturally formed. It's not easy to create such an enormous bead. Do you think that it could be casually created by just anyone? This means that whoever created this is definitely an extraordinary person. Moreover, we don't even understand what it is at all. Keeping it in our hands would only bring trouble. Fine. Bolton was a little hesitant, but in the end he knew clearly what was important since he was more than 100 years old and had survived in the universe for a long time. He just simply felt that it was a pity. What a beautiful planet it is, and it will have to be auctioned away. Even he never had such a planet in his hands before. However, what his father said was also correct. Sometimes, the more beautiful something was, the more dangerous it was. He could only reluctantly part with such a treasure. Afterwards, the news about the postponement of the auction spread like wind in the trading center. The merchants who had been preparing to trade planets and sell slaves were naturally dissatisfied. If goods were to pile up in their hands for a long time, their loss would certainly be huge. Thus, they made some inquiries through all sides and found out that the mysterious crystal planet would be auctioned off as the final item, hence the delay. Although the merchants were somewhat surprised, the dissatisfaction within their hearts disappeared. As for the merchants who arrived to the trading center late, although they discovered that an orange planet had appeared in the space like many others, they thought that the new orange planet was merely a building that was built by the trading center, and didn't think too deeply about it. After all, a planet-size crystal ball gave the impression that it was an ornament of the trading center. For this reason, they admired Sir Xiaya for spending money so extravagantly. Until when, they found out that it was actually an auction item that Sir Xiaya had obtained. Tut tut! This auction's item size was seriously too big. Never had a whole planet be moved over in the past when it was being auctioned off. The merchants couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts, Sir Xiaya is really resourceful, he could even get a hold of such a large crystal planet. As a result, the news that a rare crystal planet was going to be auctioned off at the Xiaya Trading Center quickly spread out. The universe merchants were not clear about the value of the Dragon Ball, nor did they understand the reason for its sudden appearance. If they knew what the Super Dragon Ball could do, even if they had to stake it all and lose their family fortune, they would take the Super Dragon Ball for their own. Time flew by, and in a flash 1 month passed by. All the aliens who heard about the news gathered over in the trading center. The 3 stars of Xiaya Trading Center was suddenly overcrowded. Aliens, who rushed over from the nearby starfields could be seen everywhere. Some of the aliens who were much farther away were rushing over without stopping to rest after receiving the news. Who knows how many people will be present when the auction actually begins? Many aliens who had already arrived were engaging in private transactions before the auction began. Others flew in small spacecrafts to see the Dragon Ball with their own eyes. They had never seen such a massive crystal ball before in their life. They were absolutely stunned by the beautiful, smooth, and round appearance of the Dragon Ball. On the other side, deep in the vast universe, extremely far away from the Milky Way galaxy, a silvery grey spaceship could be seen speeding through the starry sky like a small bright meteor. Its bright light flashed through the curtain of darkness, leaving behind a trail of dazzling and colorful brilliance. It has been nearly a whole month since Vados had sealed Xiaya's space-time ability, and it was soon about to be released. During this month, Xiaya, who had at first been interested in observing and admiring the resplendent scenery of space, eventually got bored after seeing the same scenery day after day. After which, Xiaya used the majority of the time to train. Although the ship's body was small, since the small spacecraft was a ship the Fate Ayas developed for Xiaya's personal use, it had all the training facilities inside. However, it was certainly not as good as the complete facilities on planet Hongshan. Huo! An afterimage appeared, followed by a flash. A glittering and translucent energy wave flew over from the side. Xiaya, who was jumping around inside the ship, abruptly stopped in front of the energy wave, and sent an attack at the energy wave. His hands were clasped tightly together, his palms slowly separated, and he brought about a strong light which quickly unleashed a frightening energy. It roared out through his fingers, welcoming the coming energy wave like a legendary flood dragon. Rumble! With a burst of muffled noises, the two clumps of energy collided and immediately blew up into a huge cloud of blurry smoke like a budding flower that accidentally met a spring breeze. It blossomed into a beautiful and delicate flower. The violent explosion caused the ship to shake, which was very dangerous considering it was traveling at a very high speed. Fortunately, the ship's training cabin was built with special materials that could absorb a certain amount of energy. If not, the explosion would likely have been enough to destroy the spaceship and killed people. So, he had to be very careful when training on the ship. He picked up a wet towel and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Xiaya's handsome face faintly smiled as he walked out of the training cabin and entered the bathroom. After a workout, it was really a pleasure to soak in a hot bath. After his bath, Xiaya, wrapped in a bath towel, walked out and picked up the Dragon Ball radar to take a look. The signal still showed that the Dragon Ball was still in its original location and had not moved. It seems that the Dragon Ball is still there. However, with Vados' personality, she certainly won't make it easy for me to get the Super Dragon Ball. That place may even be a lion's den. Xiaya quietly pondered. It wasn't that he was afraid of a challenge. Saiyans actually liked challenges. The more difficult it is, the more they would face it head-on. When one defeats their enemy or breaks through a limit, the kind of carefree and uninhibited feeling that comes along with it was not only physically satisfying, but also spiritually nourishing. Except, there is still that other Super Dragon Ball that is unaccounted for. I don't know where it was hidden by Vados. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. The boundless universe was so large that wanting to find the other Dragon Ball whose signal was blocked would be really too difficult. Could it be that Vados does not plan to let him obtain the Super Dragon Balls after all? Xiaya had this thought and almost immediately shook his head. Vados stood at such a high level, so what she said should definitely be true. Moreover, she certainly did not care much about the Super Dragon Balls. She wouldn't do so. A few days later, Vados' seal on his body was as expected removed on time. When the familiar space-time ability again returned to his body once again, he knew that Vados did not lie to him. The next thing that Xiaya did, however, was not to directly use instant transmission to travel to the location of the Dragon Ball. This was because he knew that there was bound to be a fierce battle when he arrived, so he had to adjust his mental state first. Another month passed by in a blink of an eye. After this period of adjustment, everything was ready. Xiaya opened the cabin door and flew out of the spacecraft. As the smoke arose, the ship changed back into the Hoi Poi capsule. Putting the capsule into his dimensional space, Xiaya closed his eyes and meditated for a bit before teleporting to the position of the Super Dragon Ball, which was the Milky Way galaxy. Bofei Trading Center, main star. On a green and boundless plain, a soft breeze blew, causing the leaves to gently rustle and the tender grass to bend down, forming exquisite ripples. Warm sunshine radiated down, making people feel lukewarm, and a refreshing faint fragrance floated through the air. At this time, a quick beam of light flashed in the plains and Xiaya's figure appeared out of nowhere. Raising his head, he could see two giant celestial bodies suspended in the dark blue sky like a disk. Indeed, it was the Bofei Trading Center's 3 solid planets, with 2 additional round objects suspended beside the main planet. Upon taking a closer look, there was one more huge dark orange planet flickering with bright orange rays of light like a sun. It was even bigger than the 2 planets next to it. Super Dragon Ball! Seeing the familiar thing before him, Xiaya shouted inwardly. This star was precisely the Dragon Ball that he had been looking for. However, Xiaya immediately curbed his smile and turned serious. There was a serious problem. How was he supposed to take away the Super Dragon Ball under the eyes of the masses? Vados put the Dragon Ball here, so she certainly wouldn't let him take it away so easily. Chapter 141, Auction. Even though Xiaya was confident in his own strength and was certain that he could deal with almost any situation, it was still likely that something unexpected could occur. There are times where it is necessary to plan before acting, and it was always good to be careful. Xiaya warned himself that Vados must have moved the Dragon Ball here for a specific reason. It may even be a test. What people fear the most is that they often think they understand everything, when in reality, they didn't know a thing at all. Settling his thoughts, he carefully sensed the various auras on the planet. The first thing he needed to determine was the current situation of the planet, and the number of experts, in order to understand what may happen and prepare in advance. As he spread his ki out to sense, he noticed all sorts of disorderly auras pouring over from every direction. He carefully sorted through them, causing his eyebrows to gradually lock together. He discovered that there was a huge number of strong experts on the planet, so much that it was strange. That's weird, there shouldn't be any reason for there to be so many experts on a single planet. Even on planet Hongshan, we didn't have more than 200 people whose battle power exceeded 10,000. But here, there are more than 400 people who are above 10,000 in battle power. Xiaya was shocked. His face revealed an expression of astonishment and even a bit of disbelief. Was Universe 6 swarming with experts? No, Xiaya quickly shook his head, immediately denying this speculation. According to his prior understanding, Universe 6 and 7 didn't have too much of a difference, and the overall disparity in level was not very big. This meant that the warriors here should be quite low-leveled, and those whose battle power exceeded 10,000 should be as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. For there to be so many experts here, there ought to be some sort of special occasion. It seems he needs to properly investigate. This Vados, I should have long expected that she wouldn't let me get the Super Dragon Ball so easily. After making up his mind, Xiaya was ready to leave. He perceived for an area where the crowd was quite dense and teleport there, leaving the abundant green plain. The more crowded a place is, the more information one could gather. At this time, on the other side of the planet, the auction was in full swing. Bofei Trading Center's auction was held in a huge coliseum in the central city. The coliseum had 5 floors altogether. In the middle was a huge auctioning platform, which was more than enough to accommodate 100,000 people. The auction was to be held for a total of 10 days, and it was now the last day. According to how the auction was arranged, the more valuable the goods were, the later it would be auctioned. As a result, the auctioning of slaves which all the large forces plundered from the conquered planets was happening right now. Slave trading was the second largest profitable after planet trading. Those slaves were mostly beautiful women with attractive figures or delicate faces. This was exactly what some wealthy merchants in the universe liked the most. Therefore, there were also some people who specialized in the shady business of grooming special slaves and selling them. Of course, because those slaves had to be traded away, only some of the upper class or specialized races could be qualified to be placed in an auction of this level. All the other inferior races had already been annihilated during the fall of their home world. Some of these beautiful slaves had very heavy expressions, others numb, each and every one of them appearing lifeless. They seemed to have accepted their tragic fate. As merchants shouted out bids after bids, batches of slaves were successfully bought and sold. Gazing at the trading deals being done, Bofei and his sons revealed delightful smiles on their crimson faces. This was because for every business deal made, they could collect a fixed fee from it. What is this called? This is called free trade. More importantly, upon seeing the slaves' despairing and helpless expressions caused a hot burning feeling to erupt in their hearts, making their blood boil. Father, I noticed that Xiaya has really made a big fortune this time. The slaves he sold were all of high quality, which lead to high prices. I wonder where he plundered them from. Boku Spak was leaning leisurely against a stone chair while his hand was rocking a cup filled with green liquid. Bofei laughed heartily and said, "It is of no concern where he plundered them from, Xiaya is our regular customer. Be sure to take care of him, but the auction fee cannot be less by even 1 coin. If the other party was so strong that they had to attach importance to them, the auction fee would certainly be reduced accordingly. If they wanted to form a close relationship, they would give a certain discount, but Xiaya was not on that list. Well, it is time for the planets to be auctioned away. This time, there are 137 planets to be auctioned. Once again we will be making a big fortune." Bolton's dark blue eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty cold light like of a snake and laughed as he licked his lips. Touching on the topic of auctioning planets, the father and sons trio all laughed. It was the most important and most profitable part of the entire auction, and as the organizer they naturally will get the most profit. The reason why the Bofei Trading Center managed to thrive and be so popular, was because at least half of the trading center was supported by Planet Trading. In the corner of the auction room, behind a pillar, Xiaya's figure quietly appeared. It had been a while since he had entered the auction venue. Through the language translation device he casually communicated with the alien next to him, and gained an understanding on why there were so many experts on this planet. It turned out that this was one of the Universe Commerce Alliance's trading centers in the Milky Way. At present, there was an auction being held, so all the universe merchants from the nearby starfields were gathered here. Every one of the powerful auras were either lone universe travelers or powerful bodyguards invited by the merchants, or simply a leader of the forces. So that's how it is, no wonder there are so many strong auras here. This planet is a trading center. Xiaya inwardly nodded his head. This planet was similar to Planet Vegeta of Universe 7, except that planet is a trading area that had been organized spontaneously by various races. It conducts regular trading and has a good and peaceful atmosphere. Meanwhile, this was a place where a group of pirates sell their booty and where the weak are prey to the strong, openly bullying weak and even more darker. Observing the bidder on the auction stage excitedly bidding, Xiaya pondered, I have never heard about this Universe Commerce Alliance before. They even sell planets so blatantly, so they can't be a good organization. With more in-depth interactions, Xiaya became clear about the nature of the Universe Commerce Alliance, and understood how frightening it is. He couldn't help but be a bit speechless in his heart. It was a giant alliance on the universal scale. No one actually knows just how much area it spans across, and it even have an incalculable number of experts. Almost every galaxy had several alliances' strongholds. In the past, he had believed that business like interstellar trade could only be carried out between some low and medium-sized planets, supplementing each other's plus and minus. He could never understand why a universe emperor like Frisia who had such power and status would carry out shady business like selling planets. With his strength, why did he need to use other people to do business? Couldn't he just directly rob? It was now that he finally understood. Universe 6 was similar to Universe 7, which meant that the races were also similar. In Universe 7, there was likely to also be a super commerce alliance that spanned countless galaxies. In the Milky Way galaxy alone, the frost demons such as Frisia may be considered to be at the peak of power, but may not actually be at the pinnacle of the summit. There may be a hidden force concealed beneath them. Chapter 142, Someone Dares to Act Wildly. Still waters are really deep. Forget it, it's pointless to think too much. I should focus on finding a way to get the Super Dragon Ball. Xiaya thought for a moment, but with the current situation, it seems that the only way he could get the Super Dragon Ball would be to forcefully rob it. However, it's somewhat difficult. Xiaya's eyes turned sharp, and his gaze wandered to where Bofei and his two sons were sitting in the VIP sections of the auction venue. These three people were the most powerful beings on the planet. Even Xiaya didn't have full assurance that he could defeat them. As for the other aliens, their battle power was only in the tens of thousands, something that he doesn't even take seriously. His gaze returned to the auction platform. He couldn't help but feel pity for the beautiful slaves who were bought away by the merchants. However, he didn't have the impulsiveness to intervene in the ongoing trade because there was no way he could rescue them from the hands of so many powerful experts. After the slave trading ended, it was time for the long-awaited planet trading. As the beautiful planets were being traded, the atmosphere within the venue reached its peak. Below is the finale of this auction, the final item that will be sold. Everyone take a look at this floating dark orange crystal planet in the middle of space. The auction was drawing to a close, and finally the Super Dragon Ball was to be auctioned. Many of the merchants who were present had hurried over precisely for the crystal planet. If they could obtain this mysterious planet, they could perhaps earn a big fortune upon reselling it. So when they heard that the Super Dragon Ball was finally going to be auctioned, everyone became spirited while their eyes emitted golden lights. The auctioneer nodded in satisfaction, and began to eloquently introduce the various magical aspects of the crystal planet. What functions the great prophet had predicted, and how Sir Bofei suffered untold hardships just to snatch this from a particularly powerful expert. In short, the crystal planet was incredibly magical, and ridiculously rare, and it would be an enormous loss if it couldn't be obtained. Relying solely on his mouth, this auctioneer managed to turn black into white, from trash into a rare treasure, such a con man. Had it not been that Xiaya knew the origin and the true function of the Super Dragon Ball, he would have probably been conned by the auctioneer. Such a talent! Xiaya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although the Super Dragon Ball was in fact very magical and super rare, everything that the auctioneer said was not to the point. However, there were many people in the venue that believed his words. The moment the auctioneer put down the microphone and declared the start of the auction, all the business magnates immediately began to bid, and the price went up little by little. You all can continue to bid while I'm just going to take the Dragon Ball away. Seeing this, Xiaya smiled faintly. He found a secluded place and disappeared while nobody was paying attention. The next second, Xiaya appeared next to the Super Dragon Ball wearing a simple breathing apparatus. At this time, the sun's rays were refracting off the huge dark orange planet, giving off a lustrous sheen. From far away, it would seem like another sun had risen in space. Xiaya saw a group of fully equipped spacecrafts floating around the Dragon Ball. There were probably around 1,000 of them, and they were all closely guarding the Dragon Ball. I must take care of them as soon as possible and quickly leave with the Super Dragon Ball. Pondering for only a moment, Xiaya prepared to attack. Highly compressed shiny energy waves condensed between his hands, and like a laser beam as thin as hair, shot out in a straight trajectory and charged towards the spacecrafts. Rumble! The moment the ships were hit by Xiaya's energy wave, there was a sudden burst of muffled trembling in space, and fierce explosions immediately followed. Fire and black smoke raged in space before it was quickly dispersed by the surrounding vacuum. This was immediately discovered by the surrounding spacecrafts. As a result, beep 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 the alarm sounded. The nearby spacecrafts immediately gathered around in a two-pronged attack, and at the same time, an emergency signal was transmitted to Trading Center's headquarters as quickly as possible. Xiaya was aware of this situation, but he was not alarmed. He had predicted that this would happen from the very beginning. His attack speed grew faster and faster, throwing huge energy balls with every wave of his hand. With his current battle power, even energy bursting out from a casual attack of his was enough to blow up an entire continent. Hence, when the blazing and explosive energy came in contact with a ship, an earth-shattering explosion would occur, and the whole spacecraft would explode and crash to the ground. I must speed up, or it would only attract more and more aliens to come. With more and more ships moving closer together and even more ships on the ground joining the assault, Xiaya soon found that he had underestimated the defenses of the trading center. Therefore, he made a quick decision and stepped up his attacks. For a moment, beautiful and dazzling ring of lights appeared around the Super Dragon Ball. Every bright spot was a spacecraft exploding. At this time, Bofei Trading Center's artificial fortresses had also opened fire. A thick black cannon was aimed at Xiaya, and a powerful attack was launched. The concentrated firepower converged together creating an inescapable net surrounding Xiaya. Unfortunately, the fortresses were only designed to be able to defend against experts with the battle power around 50,000. So even if they were firing with full power, in front of Xiaya, a super expert who had more than 700,000 battle power, it had no effect whatsoever. Boom! Between his rapid attacks, Xiaya's body was so fast that there were only traces of afterimages that could be seen. With just a point of his finger, large amount of objects would be destroyed. Before long, all the ships and artificial fortresses were destroyed under Xiaya's fists. Bofei Main Star, Auction Venue. Fiery auction biddings were still going on. Every merchant were constantly bidding with a struggling red face. Every single time, the price of the Dragon Ball would shoot up to the extreme. Observing all this, Bofei and his son's faces were glowing with happiness. Just then, a guard hurried in and yelled, "Not good, Sir Bofei, someone is trying to steal the crystal planet. Most of the guard ships are already destroyed." Kaka! The wine glass in Bofei's hand shattered and a green liquid spilled to the ground. His lips moved slightly, and a wisp of chilliness congealed in his dark blue eyes. He suddenly stood up and a powerful imposing aura immediately erupted out, causing the guard in front of him to have difficulty breathing, shivering in fear. Well well well, someone unexpectedly dares to act wildly in my Sir Bofei's territory. How many years has it been since something like this has happened? His voice was icy and piercing to the bone, like a cold wind blowing out from hell. Sir Bofei had been an agent of the trading center for hundreds of years and rarely has such an incident occurred. Was it because he had not taken action for more than 100 years that people had forgotten how he had seized the trading center from his predecessor? To the side, Boku also stood up and coldly said, "Father, let me and Bolton go first and catch that presumptuous guy." "Yes, Let us do it! Bolton shouted loudly, his body emitting a formidable energy that swirled around him like a whirlwind. This whirlwind suddenly rose, and all sorts of objects that were arranged in his surroundings swirled along with it. Even some nearby aliens were blown up and around. They had to hurriedly use their hands to tightly cling to the surrounding pillars, and only barely managed to stabilize their bodies. Everyone around them were silent in fear, unaware of what was going on. Gazing at Bofiai and his two sons, their eyes were full of fear, and crazy worship. Bofiai waved his hand and had his two sons calm down. His icy expression was furious as he coldly said, "Both of you come with me. I want to see what that person is relying on to act wildly in this uncle's territory." Destroying trading centers' business was not putting him, Sir Bofiai, in its eyes. For such people, only death could appease the anger in his heart. "Hee, we should go over quickly," Bolton said while rubbing his fists and palms. Covered with scales, his palms rubbed against one another, making a jarring sound. "Let's go!" With a loud shout, father and son trio soared into the air and flew straight towards the direction of the Super Dragon Ball, quickly turning into a black spot and disappearing into the atmosphere. Chapter 143, Taking Action. "Hey, what's going on? Why did Sir Bofiai suddenly fly away?" Seeing Sir Bofiai's burly figure suddenly soaring into the sky, some aliens asked, puzzled. "I'm not sure, but I think someone is trying to steal the crystal planet," a merchant who had probably heard something, whispered. Everyone was dumbfounded, and then suddenly they all burst into laughter as if they heard something funny. "Ha ha ha ha, how can this be? Someone actually dares to stir up trouble in the Bofiai Trading Center. Are they tired of living? Go and find out who it is. In the past several hundreds of years, who has dared challenge Sir Bofiai's prestige? There's no way someone would come and stir up trouble, right? How can it be?" Everyone felt it was unimaginable. They did not believe that someone would really dare behave in this manner. "Let's go, we'll take a look too. Maybe we can get a chance to see Sir Bofiai take action personally." A universe merchant suddenly shouted. His words were like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone's hearts to become excited. "Yeah, it's extremely rare for Sir Bofiai to personally taking action. If we miss it this time, we might not ever see it again." Someone responded. Go go go, let's take a look. Wait for me. Let's go together, let's go together." At the venue, when both the lone travelers and merchants found out that they could see Sir Bofiai personally take action, they were unwilling to miss such a splendid and outstanding fight. They boarded their spacecrafts under the protection of their bodyguards and flew towards the outer space. For a time, a large number of spacecrafts flew out of the spaceport of Bofiai Trading Center's main star, and this dense crowd of ships flew near to where the Super Dragon Ball was located. However, when they came to about a distance of 150,000 kilometers from the place where Super Dragon Ball was located, some merchants whose strength was weak did not dare approach any closer. Without any prior discussion, they simultaneously stopped and chose to observe the situation from afar using high-tech equipment. Only a select few lone travelers who were confident in their strength dared to get closer. Between the horizon in the vast starry sky, the lights were flickering. In his hand, Xiaya held an energy chain which he was continuously brandishing it around. Like a dancing silver snake, it entirely destroyed large groups of spaceships that were coming towards him. Xiaya knew that the longer he stayed here, the more likely new problems would arise. There was no time to lose. He immediately teleported to the surface of the Super Dragon Ball, preparing to move it away. However, as he prepared to launch instant transmission, he suddenly felt a ripple in space. It was a large-scale spatial vibration. Because of this, it became difficult to teleport the Dragon Ball. At the same time, he detected three powerful auras that were quickly approaching him. Is Bofiai coming? Xiaya's eyebrows creased. This thought had only appeared in his mind before he saw three beams of light rushing towards him. Like three sharp arrows, they appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. They were three red-skinned, muscular and tall aliens. They were entirely covered in scales and had 4 eyes. 2 of the eyes were closed, and the other 2 were open. Their deep blue eyes were full of coldness, and gazing at them made people feel like being in a boundless hell. In particular, Xiaya noticed that among the 3 powerful auras exuded, the 2 smaller ones were not bad. But Bofiai in the middle made him feel palpitation in his heart. His expression could not help but become grave. This tall and powerful person's battle power was not any less than his. Xiaya determined in his heart. Floating in front of Xiaya, his 5-meter-tall body was like a small hill, and in addition to the blazing blue ki radiating off his body, he gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. These must be the Bofei Trading Center's agents, Bofei and his sons. Seeing them up close, they are really tall. Xiaya stared at the 3 people before him. At this time, Bofei and his sons also noticed Xiaya. I was wondering who would want to rob my crystal planet, but it turns out it was just a small brat. Bofei swept his eyes over Xiaya like a viper would over its prey before turning to his 2 sons, laughingly saying, "Yeah, doesn't he know? Who would dare act wildly in our Bofei family's territory? Isn't that just looking for trouble?" The older son, Boku, raised his head and said arrogantly. Normally, sound could not be transmitted in space, but Bofei's species did not seem to communicate through sound waves. As a result, such a vacuum environment did not hinder their communication. The universe was really full of wonderful and strange things. Due to evolution, these kinds of aliens who could survive in a vacuum environment managed to create this unique form of communication. "Father, let me twist his neck." Bolton eagerly switched on his high-level detector distributed by the Universe Commerce Alliance. After a moment of beep 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 sounds, the detector showed Xiaya's battle power. Tapping the energy detector in his hand, Bolton showed an incredulous expression. "Aya, he really is not simple. This human's battle power has reached 50,000. He has really extraordinary strength." However, his voice was rather unperturbed, not even the slightest bit intimidated. Instead, his eyes were glistening in amusement as he stared at Xiaya, like he was observing an interesting toy. In Universe 6, the humans were very weak. Xiaya's aura may had surprised him, but in the end he was only an enhanced version of an ant, nothing more. Boku was also a bit surprised. Unexpectedly, this small human has such high battle power. He couldn't be a Saiyan, right? Hehe, this is interesting. Why are you talking so much? Let's go together. Bolton gave him a meaningful glance, and together they went ahead and surrounded Xiaya from both directions. One on the left, and the other on the right. "Bolton, this kid is so thin. Perhaps, you would be reluctant to hit him, so just let your elder brother handle him. I'll even give you a planet in exchange." Boku smiled and spoke to Bolton while operating his skill. Listening to him, Bolton was dissatisfied and shook his head. "That's no good. He's my prey. Fine, fine, let's fight together. Whoever kills this guy first will have to give the other 5 planets as reward, how about that?" Boku smiled and proposed a bet, clearly not putting Xiaya in his eyes. "All right." When the 2 reached an agreement, they tacitly approached Xiaya. Xiaya noticed both of them moving. Although he did not clearly hear their conversation, he could feel the malice behind their words and actions. "Do they intend to gang up on me?" A sneer appeared at the corners of his mouth. A multicolored light flashed in his eyes, and the brother's strength and information appeared in his eyes. It was his Spirit Eye secret skill. It revealed to him that his opponent's battle power was 270,000 and 240,000 respectively. This sort of battle power may be quite rare in the universe, but their arrogance to annihilate him was really just indulging in fantasies. "You asked for it!" Xiaya softly shouted, and immediately erupted out in an imposing aura. 2 fingers of his hand crossed into a sword, and a frigid light flashed between his fingers. Hwalala, and a vigorous ki attacked towards both Boku and Bolton. A sharp electric ray flashed and immediately divided into 2. Shiu shiu, both brothers' body trembled. Subconsciously feeling danger, they quickly dodged to the side, avoiding the flash. Feeling a slight chill on their chest, they looked down and found scarlet blood splashing out. "What?" While covering their chests, both brothers had an incredulous look on their face. The powerful impact caused them to fly away, completely out of control. In just an instant, they were wounded by the opponent. "Arg! This damn guy actually wounded this uncle." Bolton's temperament was extremely violent. He stretched out both his arms and stopped his body. Suddenly getting wound caused him to explode in anger. Immediately, a blazing blue ki burst forth, and a sinister and disgusting aura began to emit from his body. "Hey!" Xiaya raised his eyebrows. "This sinister aura is truly disgusting." "Bolton, calm down. This guy seems to be different from our other opponents from before. The data displayed on the energy detector is not accurate at all." Boku was clearly more experienced and knowledgeable, and knew that it was impossible to judge Xiaya's strength. The 50,000 battle power shown by the detector was clearly incorrect. Observing not far away, Bofi watched his two sons being repelled with a hint of uncertainty in his heart. His face was dark like dripping ink. An icy voice echoed out, "Don't be deceived by his surface strength, he must have learned a skill that allows him to burst out his strength. Both of you will act together." Yes. Although Boku and Bolton were astonished, they had the utmost faith in their father's words. Since their father said so, it must be true. They immediately changed their formation and attacked. This time, they did not dare to be careless and went all out from the beginning. Chapter 144, Both the brothers were defeated. Boku and Bolton moved, and countless lights intertwined together to form a large impenetrable net. Both of them advanced, pressing attacks towards Xiaya. Voila! Dazzling rays of light burst out of nowhere, and the sparkling flashes immediately illuminated the whole audience, stinging everyone's eyes. Everyone was briefly blinded. Now! They glanced at one another, face flashing with happiness. Right now they were serious and were finally treating Xiaya as a tough opponent. Their palms covered with thin scales pressed against each other, and two crystal-clear energy balls appeared out of thin air before they began to shrink. Then, a bright white ray of light burst out. "Go to hell!" Yelling crazily, Boku and Bolton's expression was incredibly sinister, and the bright white energy balls trembled. With a shoo sound, the two energy balls pierced through space one after another and directly attacked towards Xiaya. There were many shortcomings regarding human eyes, such as being sensitive towards bright lights. It was something that human beings gained through evolution and could be considered an advantage in some areas, yet in battle it could potentially be a huge burden. The reason why Tian Xinyan's solar flare was so effective every time, and why it was able to achieve unexpected results, was because it made use of the eye's overreaction to the stimulation of a strong light. This was a natural defect in the visual image forming system. Therefore, one of the requirements for key training was to not depend on the naked eye to observe the opponent's movements. However, this time you have miscalculated. Xiaya's mouth revealed a wisp of a sneer. They probably had not thought he didn't need to use his eyes when sensing for key responses. As the saying went, it is impolite not to reciprocate. He suddenly stepped forward in a flash of light, shrinking the distance between them by half. Pointing at the incoming energy ball, he assumed a counter-attacking posture and joined his thumb and forefinger together. Huo! A flickering speck of light the size of a peanut was suddenly formed. Energy blast! Xiaya shouted loudly and pushed both his hands forward. The peanut-sized energy blast suddenly enlarged, with its diameters reaching up to 100 meters. Its color changing from red to dark, and then with a overpowering frightening might it rushed forward. Instantly, one large and two small energy balls met in space. Rumble! The smaller white energy balls collided with the dark energy blast. Similar to when a small ball would collide with an titanium alloy ball, it immediately produced a violent explosion. A huge fireball appeared in space, and waves of energy surged ceaselessly, spewing crimson flames everywhere. In the dark universe, it looked like another star was born. It was like a solar corona which extended out hundreds of kilometers, spewing flames. The energy balls fired by the brothers were instantly devoured by the energy blast, while as if having not encountered any obstruction, its frightening might continued to sweep towards them. My energy ball was actually broken. Boku stared blankly, his heart turning cold and his forehead broke out into cold sweat. Such a powerful energy blast caught him unprepared. The same was true on Bolton's end. He never expected that his super energy ball couldn't even withstand a single attack. Dangerous! A sense of crisis arose in Bolton's heart. Facing the energy blast which had not decreased in might by even a little, Boku also felt danger approaching. Hence he subconsciously shifted his body intending to break away from the engagement. It was at this moment, however, Xiaya's second round of attacks rushed over, with an even more powerful force. Boku's heart trembled, and after dodging several times he discovered he had suddenly lost sight of Xiaya. In the next second, Xiaya's enlarged face suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Ah! Boku was frightened, and immediately after which he felt severe pain in his abdomen. In less than a second, he suffered from an innumerable number of punches in succession. The force from every punch penetrated through his back. Boku's eyes were full of stars as his body shot out like an artillery shell. Boku! Seeing Boku being sent flying in a head-on collision, his condition incredibly miserable, Bolton's eyes flashed with a frightened expression as he looked at Xiaya. However, aware that his father was not too far away watching him, he had no choice but summon up his courage and pounce forward in a roar. Good, come! Xiaya laughed heartily and immediately pulled away. While confronting these two brothers, Xiaya had completely dominated the two with his strength. Rumble, large number of explosions appeared in the space, and the fight turned one-sided. The shocking scene awed everyone present. Heavens, is that person really a human? Even after cooperating, Sir Boku and Sir Bolton could not capture him. From afar, the aliens stared with eyes wide open, not daring to believe the scene before them. It was especially traumatic to those who thought they were powerful fighters in their own right. After they witnessed the fight between Xiaya and the two brothers, fear couldn't help but rise in their hearts, and their backs became drenched in sweat. Awesome! Even though we are so far away, we can still feel the power of that heaven-destroying and earth-exterminating energy wave. There are actually such powerful humans in the universe. Everyone present sucked in cold breaths, staring dumbstruck. It must be known that Boku and Bolton's battle power was more than 200,000. This was incredibly high. However, that human could actually compete with the two brothers and even subdue them. What kind of strength is that? As the fighting continued, they discovered that the human did not seem to have exhausted his strength, and in fact the battlefield was actually expanding. Everyone, quickly retreat! Nobody knows who shouted it out in the communication channel, but the merchants all quickly reversed their spacecrafts and retreated at top speed. Rumble! Suddenly, the space shook. In the middle of the battlefield, Xiaya produced an energy ball with an indifferent expression. Then he turned it into countless tiny drops of rain, scattering it out. The raindrops flashed with glittering splendor, like a beautiful crystal. However, they suddenly converged together and turned into sharp swords, only to explode out with a loud bang. The frightening energy rolled towards the brothers with lightning speed, while its remaining might swept outwards in all directions. Ah! Quickly run away! The exploding is going to sweep towards us. Some of the sharp-eyed aliens noticed that the situation was not good, and hurriedly escaped backwards. However, many more were not aware of the situation, so by the time they reacted it was too late to escape. Oh no! We can't escape! In the face of such pure destructive energy coming in continuous streams, all the defense they had were of no use. Very quickly the nearest group of ships and aliens were engulfed. Under such highly concentrated energy and pressure, they had no time to react before they were burned to ashes. Woo! Close call! That was too dangerous just now. If we had reacted even a little bit slower, we would have died. Some of the aliens who had escaped the fastest felt the explosion behind their backs and dared not stop. They were frightened beyond their wits, gasping for breath. It was seriously too scary. Even just the shockwaves of the explosion was so powerful. It couldn't be that Boku and Bolton who were at the center of the explosion were also killed, right? Everyone shuddered, and out of the corner of their eyes they cautiously looked to where Sir Bofi was. They saw his face trembling, with blue veins twitching, and had a terrifyingly somber countenance. Not good. If something bad did happen to Boku and Bolton, then Sir Bofi would surely be enraged. When that happens, the human would no doubt be dead, but they wouldn't be much better off. The furious Sir Bofi would pay them no heed, killing them all together. At this time, they were neck-deep in regret. Why did they came here to look at the fighting without any reason? Everyone looked expectantly at the center where explosion had occurred, hoping that the two sirs would be safe and sound. The heavy smoke was quickly dispersed away by the vacuum, and two blurry figures could be made out. Naturally, they were the two brothers who were still alive. Yet they cut quite a sorry figure, with arms hanging down, torn skin and gaping flesh, shining scales peeling off, their 4 eyes half opened, and blood flowing out of every inch of their body. They were gasping heavily, no longer having their previous confident and leisurely appearance. They were really lucky to be able to survive the explosion. Ah, damn it! Both brothers were riddled with wounds as they stared at the person not far away, who had inflicted all this onto them. They shouted angrily. Just now, they had brushed upon death's door. This was a feeling that they never felt before. From childhood to now, they grew up under the protection of their father. By the time they grew to be strong experts in these hundreds of years, not many people in the Milky Way galaxy were their opponents. This time, however, they unexpectedly lost to the hands of a supposedly weak human. A humiliating fury rushed out of their hearts. They want to go and fight it out with Xiaya once again, but when they noticed his calm expression as if he hadn't used even a little bit of strength, they hesitated. Such formidable strength, could a human really possess it? Is that person really even human? Had he already reached their father's level? Both Boku and Bolton found it hard to believe, but since he had easily defeated them, his strength was certainly not inferior. Boku, Bolton, both of you back off. Just as when they were hesitating, an icy voice from behind and they saw Bofiai flying over, his countenance dark and cold. Father! Father! Both of you! Back! Off! Bofiai's face hardened as he once again ordered. Yes! Boku and Bolton responded loudly. They understood that they were not the humans' match. Now that their father was going to take action, they could only unwillingly back off. Human, you are the most powerful of your kind that I have seen in the past hundreds of years, and even those Saiyans are far from comparable to you. Bofiai's voice was gloomy, as it was directly transmitted to Xiaya's ear using a who-knows-what method. Chapter 145, Probing. Bofiai floated towards Xiaya and stopped less than 500 meters away. This small amount of distance was pretty much nothing to experts, for they only need a split second to cross it. Bofiai himself hadn't taken action for almost 100 years. He thought he would never have the opportunity to fight again. Especially after his two sons grew up, he fought less and less. Regarding his two sons, he was very satisfied. Both had become very powerful, so many of the trifling matters could be efficiently resolved by just sending them. He felt relieved for both his sons. Even when someone tried to snatch the crystal planet, he was not intending to take action. However, what he did not expect was that his sons were not the opponent of the other at all. This was something that had not happened in many years. He was livid in anger, his countenance extremely gloomy. Human, you are the most powerful human I have seen in these past hundreds of years. Even those Saiyans are far from your match. His voice was steeped with gloom, as his voice was directly transmitted using an unknown method to Xiaya's ear. Hearing Bofiai's words, Xiaya's complexion changed slightly and his expression suddenly became serious. He noticed that as Bofiai stepped forward, an icy tyrannical ki wall pushed out from his body. It was extremely powerful and overbearing, not at all comparable to Boku and Bolton's. Facing such a powerful enemy, Xiaya did not dare be careless, immediately maneuvering his ki to be on guard and resist Bofiai's imposing aura. For a while, the two keys opposed and clashed with one another in the outer space, causing a fiercely rotating vortex of energy to swirl out. The vortex continuously swirled as if two transparent spheres were colliding with one another, creating muffled rumbling sounds. Both Xiaya and Bofiai's bodies shook, their pupils dilating, and immediately looked at each other full of shock. This Bofiai is truly worthy to be a person who has ruled the trading center for several centuries. He is far more powerful than his two sons. After experiencing Bofiai's strength for the first time, Xiaya knew just how powerful the tall and sturdy giant before him was, and he could not help but sigh with emotion in his heart. The heavy feeling and faint excitement in his heart was telling him that Bofiai's body also contained an unimaginable power. This was probably the most powerful enemy that he had encountered besides Cooler. This time, however, Bofiai wasn't like Cooler, who was merely playing around with him. Right now, Bofiai was completely serious. This gave him no choice but to be cautious. Secretly using his Spirit Eye secret skill, a multicolored light covered his eyes and Bofiai's battle power was quickly turned into a series of data and vividly appeared in his mind. 760,000. This was Bofiai's battle power. Xiaya was surprised, however it wasn't really beyond his expectations. Bofiai was, as expected, a powerful expert. 760,000 battle power, he was almost on par with him. As expected, he is worthy to be the manager of the Bofiai Trading Center. Such a strong opponent was already extremely rarely seen and is considered to be a super expert in the universe. If he was in a situation where he could not use his space-time ability, he would not have a 100% assurance of winning. Additionally, he didn't know if that was all the strength the other party had. If Bofiai was concealing something, the fight would become much more difficult. But then, a smile appeared on Xiaya's face. Not only did he not shrink back, but instead he stepped forward, his whole body boiling. At this moment, the blood in his entire body was boiling. This was good too. It was difficult to run into an evenly matched opponent who can be helpful to his carefree and extreme fighting style. This was an excellent opportunity that was difficult to produce in any regular training. Let's begin. Xiaya expectantly shouted in his heart. Hwala! Xiaya and Bofiai stared at each other for a moment, and then they attacked at the same time. The speed of the two was faster than a meteor, and in a blink of an eye the originally less than 500-meter distance between them quickly disappeared. It became tens of thousands of meters before they would collide into each other again and again. For powerful experts like them, the range of tens of kilometers was nothing much at all. It only took a few seconds for them to engage several hundred times, and the range of fighting between them rapidly expanded to nearly 100 kilometers. At this moment, electric rays radiated all over, causing even the void to tremble. Every time they clashed, gravity would collapse before it became dense in the void, and then a powerful might would erupt out. Vacuum environment was easier to move in than the atmosphere of a planet. Because there was no air resistance, every force from an attack would be even more effective. There was no loss in power whatsoever. Boom! The vacuum suddenly trembled. In flashes of light, Xiaya's fist struck Bofiai's hard and shiny dark red scales. But the force of each strike was effectively blocked by the scales. Like a shining hammer striking a gong, it would tremble, producing solemn sounds. Each strike would send out ripples of energy visible to the naked eye. The ripples that seemed like ocean spray instantly turned into monstrous waves, seemingly wanting to swallow everything. Snort, are you tickling me? Bofiai suddenly snorted coldly. His eyes chilled and he silently took a step forward, leaving behind an afterimage in the void. His entire person was like a ferocious beast. As quick as lightning he drew up close and launched an attack, punching out one after another. Peng peng peng, the void began to shake again. His strength was too great, every time his punch connected, it would cause great ripples in space. Xiaya neither dodged or fled, instead chose to receive the fists head-on. As he felt the steady stream of fists might penetrating through his palms, he also began to gain a clearer grasp of Bofiai's strength. Both sides continued to attack each other. Xiaya laughed loudly and took on the other's hits as he also counterattacked in rapid succession. But it was just like before, every time his attack hit Bofiai's body, it was like knocking on an iron plate, blocked by thick layers of scales. Shoo! After the first round of attacks, the two quickly put distance between each other. Like two beams of light rapidly flying in space, another round of attacks was launched again. Their speed already exceeded the limit of what naked eyes could observe. Within a second, both sides had already fought against each other dozens of times. Each time they fought, a world-shaking scene would burst out. Heavens, so fast! I can't see their movements at all. As the fight between Xiaya and Bofiai continued, the aliens watching in the space were not able to keep up with the speed of their fight. They all stared dumbfoundedly with wide eyes, and as if they were seeing an illusion they could only get a rough idea of what was going on. At this time, the remnant shockwaves swept out from the fighting area and caused everyone to be blown away. Hurry, everyone quickly move back, the remnant shockwaves of the fight are getting stronger. Noticing that the range of battle kept expanding, a few urgent shouts sounded out. It was probably a lesson learned from before, but the aliens have become particularly sensitive to battle. After all, their personal safety was still above all. When they saw something going wrong, they quickly dispersed in all directions. The speed of escaping was just like a mouse seeing a cat. It was not an exaggeration to say they were trembling with fear, and ran away without any gracefulness. Soon the surroundings of the battlefield was empty, and only the two brothers were staying behind at their original place, looking at the fight with ugly expressions. Bunch of cowards! Boku and Bolton saw them fleeing in panic and could not help but inwardly despise them. But despite this, their hearts couldn't help but sink as they turned to watch the scene before them. Too fast! They could only see flashes of lightning light up the battlefield, and afterimages after afterimages. Both brothers had to put up an immense effort just to keep up with Bofiai and Xiaya's movements. Who the hell is this human, and how is it possible for him to fight with father to such an extent? Boku stared in disbelief. They understood deeply in their bone marrow Bofiai's strength, but now suddenly a supposedly human had appeared who could fight on par with their father. They could not differentiate who was who in the battle, making them feel like the world was becoming illusory. But they quickly calmed down. Humph! Father still hasn't gone all out yet, or that human would never be his opponent. Bolton was full of confidence in Bofiai. His expression distorted, face turning sinister. When he thought of how his father would unveil his true strength in a while, turning that human into a bloody painting, he was delighted. Although Boku clearly do not have a fierce-looking appearance, his thinking was similar and along the lines of that of Bolton's. Xiaya continued to contend with Bofiai. Fist strength and energy waves blasting out all around. The space within the 100-kilometer radius was becoming sticky, filled with scattered energy everywhere. But even after all this time, he still failed to cause any substantial injury to Bofiai. Gradually, Xiaya puckered his eyebrows and inwardly thought, the scales outside Bofiai's body is like a layer of armor. If I can't find a way to break through the scales, I can't wound him at all. Ha 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 boy, with just this minuscule amount of strength, you are no match for this uncle. After a bout of fighting, Bofiai had a light sneer on his face. The horns on his head flashed with dark luster, and the dark red scales on his body made him look like a demon who came out of hell. Xiaya did not respond and looked at him with an indifferent expression. At this time his breathing was unusually calm. He was not tired at all after the fight, and clearly hadn't used his full strength yet. He knew that the previous fight was only the two sides probing and figuring out each other's strength. No matter whether it was him or Bofiai, either had yet to use their real strength. Now that the warm-up was over, the real fight was about to begin. However, he must first find a way to leave the space environment. This was because Saiyans could not survive in space like some aliens, and thus were not good at fighting in a vacuum environment. The space environment they were in was a major factor that restricted him from displaying his true strength. His breathing equipment was also restricting his movements. If he wanted to exhibit his full strength, he must first leave the vacuum and return to a planet as soon as possible. Xiaya glanced sideways at the distant pale main star, murmuring in his heart, I could surely exert my full strength on that planet. Chapter 146, Opening his two closed eyes. In the vast starry sky, 3 large planets and a dark orange super dragon ball was floating amidst the universe. Some distance away from the burning crimson star, fierce explosions continuously occurred in a sort of circular orbit that was strewn with divine force. From these explosions were produced balls of fire nearly the size of stars which burned nearly everything in their path. Shiu shiu shiu, several beams of light suddenly flashed as Xiaya clenched his fist while frantically urging the energy within his body to move. He exerted strength into his legs, leaped, and instantly arrived before Bofiai. He furiously lashed out with his leg, his goal being Bofiai's chest. Facing Xiaya's attack, Bofiai's scaly face revealed a cold smile. Between the rapid attacks, both of his arms crossed and countered the heavy attack from Xiaya's leg. But this whole time Xiaya had been waiting for an opportunity where Bofiai would be distracted. He immediately shot towards the auction planet, quickly turning into a black dot and disappearing. That planet was the battlefield where Xiaya could utilize his full strength, so his goal was to lure Bofiai to go to the surface of the planet. However, Bofiai thought that he was trying to escape. How could he allow him to do so? Snort, do you think I will not be able to find you if you flee to the planet? He gave an angry roar before giving chase. Victory or defeat had not yet been decided, yet both sides had left space one after the other. The aliens hiding far away looked at each other in dismay. Boku was the first to react. A sneer appeared across his face, that human finally understands that father is powerful, so he wants to run away. Bolton nodded his head in agreement and replied, let's go, we should chase after them. The brothers both thought that Xiaya had run away because he was afraid of their father. They felt pleased in their heart. Humph, that human was nothing impressive, and together also whizzed towards the planet's direction. What should we do? Do we also follow? Seeing them leave, the remaining merchants and solo travelers hesitated. On one hand, they wanted very much to witness the epic fight between Sir Bofiai and the human foreigner. After all, Sir Bofiai hadn't fought in hundreds of years. If they missed such a rare confrontation of peak experts, it would really be too much of a pity. However, on the other hand, they were also worried that their life would be at risk. They were confused and unsure on what to do. Hesitating for a long time, several bold lone travelers finally prevailed over the fear in their hearts and also flew towards the planet. For them, fighting and danger was part of their everyday lives. As they say, the bold die of gluttony while the timid starve. However, they were also aware of their own strength, so although they had decided to go and watch the fight, they would make sure they were a good distance away. Yet the majority of the merchants cherished their lives. They ultimately shook their heads and rushed back to the other 2 planets of the trading center. What's more, they had a premonition that even the 2 subordinate planets would not be much safer, so they immediately left with their henchmen, returning to their territories. Seeing so many merchants leaving from the trading center, Boku and Bolton felt fury rising in their hearts, and cursed their cowardice. Putting everything that had happened on Xiaya's head. In another area, Xiaya, who was rushing ahead at full speed, turned his head and saw Bofiai pursuing closely behind. He could not help but inwardly laugh. Planet's mainland, on a dry and desolate field, there was a light breeze that blew yellow sand everywhere. A loud rumbling sound could be heard in the sky before a black shadow suddenly descended from the sky. Landing on the ground, Xiaya pulled away the breathing equipment off his face and allowed the planet's oxygen to enter his lungs. He rotated his stiff neck, his joints making kaka clear sounds. Ha, it's so much more relaxing after returning to the ground. It seems that Saiyans can only exhibit their full strength on a planet. Saiyans could not survive in a vacuum environment, and naturally it would restrict him from exhibiting his full strength. Xiaya's mood surged, but he knew it was not time to think about this. He raised his head and looked at the tiny black dot that was rapidly growing bigger and bigger. Come! He shouted in his heart. Whoosh! Bofiai's sturdy body landed straight onto the ground like a soaring high into the sky pillar. The ground shook violently as if an earthquake had suddenly erupted, and the land beneath his feet caved in to create a 5-meter-deep crater. Step by step, Bofiai calmly walked out of the crater, his deep blue eyes exuding an icy chilliness. Both of them stood far apart facing one another. The atmosphere changed, and a somber and desolate atmosphere loomed over them. With a calm expression, Xiaya smiled faintly as he stared at the more than 5-meter-tall and sturdy Bofiai before him. Seeing that Xiaya had not run away and actually turned to face him, Bofiai was surprised as he confidently said, "You surprise me. I didn't expect you to not run away. Could it be that you think you can defeat this uncle after arriving on the planet? How would I know if I don't try?" Xiaya's smiling expression turned serious, and a vigorous aura spread out, covering the heavens and the earth. Inwardly sneering, Bofiai's countenance suddenly turned dark, and very quickly his crimson face turned serious. How can this be? Is this his true strength? I can't believe he hadn't been using his full strength until now. 780,000. Such strength was enough to threaten even him. Feeling the aura fluctuations that can completely rival his, Bofiai's eyes flashed with a heavy murderous intent. Shoo! A ray of light flashed and Xiaya suddenly disappeared. He took the initiative to swiftly launch an attack at Bofiai. Seeing that the initiative was seized by Xiaya, Bofiai grew irritated and at once began to respond to the attack. Pa pa pa! Punches and kicks connected as both of them went all out. The strength which was erupting out right now was 2 times that of in the outer space. Both of them's level was about same. One attacked, one defended. Unexpectedly, no one was able to gain an advantage. Facing his attacks, Bofiai's body flashed around and his once confident face began to grow impatient. At this time, Boku, Bolton, and the other aliens hurried over and landed on the ground. They could see Xiaya and Bofiai fiercely fighting, however, even if they have better eyesight, they wouldn't be able to keep up with the two's pace. Loud crashes endlessly resounded. Xiaya's body could be seen swooping down like a missile locked on its target, straight towards Bofiai. Bofiai's face was apprehensive as a feeling of danger suddenly emerged in his heart. You are courting death. As Xiaya was about to make contact, Bofiai tightly clenched his fist and attacked towards Xiaya. Retreat! Xiaya's complexion changed as he could clearly see the force behind that powerful fist. Making a prompt decision, he reacted almost instantaneously. His body gracefully evaded Bofiai's counterattack. Using both hands he pushed backwards, performing several backwards somersaults. Humph! Too slow, human boy! An icy voice sounded beside his ears. Bofiai's dark and red silhouette appeared before him, his crimson scales being especially conspicuous. Xiaya's countenance changed, astonished by his speed. Compared to the probing fight from before, the Bofiai that was going all out was a completely different person. At this crucial moment, Xiaya's eyes flashed with a bright light and he quickly adjusted his posture, crossing both arms tightly across his chest to block his attack. Bang! Like a bell, his body shook, and a strong whirlwind exploded out from the point of impact, causing a gale to surge. Whistle! Normally, he would have been blasted away, but it didn't happen. With a strange smile on his face, he loudly shouted and flipped over his body facing downwards. Then both of his hands turned into claws and grabbed onto the ground. Thump, thump, chi! His 10 fingers entered the ground, immediately creating 10 tiny holes on the hard thick rock. Simultaneously he turned his body over and his 2 legs straightened out as he kicked towards Bofiai with all his might. Not good, I can't meet this head on. Bofiai thought inwardly, his expression fluctuating, but it was already too late to dodge. Bang! The rocky surface which he had grabbed on turned into tiny dust particles as Bofiai's chest suffered from the heavy attack. His body was kicked high into the sky by the powerful force. Wonderful! Wonderful! Xiaya laughed heartily, feeling a surge of emotions. The clash just now made his blood boil. Regardless of their strength differences, it was a rare experience for him to fight someone on this level. And this experience caused him to benefit him quite a bit. Shoo! He didn't plan on letting go of such a rare opportunity. He intends to win in one fell swoop. He immediately jumped up, crushing the rocks beneath his feet. Like a gust of wind he swiftly launched attacks at Bofiai. As his attacks landed on the flesh, peng-peng sounds could be heard. For a period of time Bofiai could not retaliate, and could only get beat up. It was a scene of overwhelming superiority. How can this be? How can father be at a disadvantage? With great difficulty they were able to see the fight. However, they did not expect to see such a one-sided fight. The rapidly changing fight made Boku stunned, as he nervously looked on with an open mouth. To tell the truth, even as Bofiai's own son, Boku had never seen his father go all out. There had never been a need. However now, a young human had shown up and forced his father to fight with full strength. His whole body trembled, and for the first time, an emotion called fear appeared in his heart. After a while, the scene of the fight again became quiet. Xiaya and Bofiai distanced themselves from each other by 100 meters. Tui! Bofiai spit out a mouthful of blood, sneering. Ha ha ha, human boy! Ever since I took over the trading center, I had never been wounded in all these years. In return, I will allow you to experience my true strength. Noisy! Xiaya looked on indifferently, but inwardly he was on guard. The thought that Bofiai was boasting never crossed his mind, because according to his intuition Bofiai's strength should not be as ordinary as it seemed. He likely hadn't revealed his true strength yet. At that instant, Xiaya noticed the two eyes on Bofiai's forehead that was still closed. Could it be that his eyes can still fully open? He watched as Bofiai crossed both his arms, and emitted a dark sickly aura form all over his body. Ha! Bofiai loudly shouted before the dark aura permeating around him became even more stifling. Putong putong, his heart was beating rapidly. Something shocking happened. Xiaya saw that the two previously closed eyes on Bofiai's forehead had suddenly opened. They were blood red with no pupils, and were like two blood-red agate crystals, sparkling with a luster. Huam! The moment Bofiai opened his eyes, a strong oppressive feeling swept throughout the whole planet. Everyone felt a burst of dizziness, as if their chest was being pounded by a heavy hammer, making it very difficult to breathe. How could his battle power increase to 940,000? Xiaya's complexion greatly changed. Who could have thought that this Bofiai had also grasped a key burst ability? After opening his remaining two eyes, his battle power suddenly jumped from 760,000 to 940,000. Chapter 147, Key Ignition. Due to the sudden rise in Bofiai's power, a heavy pressure swept out. Xiaya's expression turned grave. He did not expect that Bofiai was also able to ignite his ki. Although his method was very crude, it was indeed a method to use ki. Ki ignition and ki accumulation were all methods often used by the Dragon Ball fighters when they fought against their enemies in the original work. This helped the fighters who had low battle power to exhibit formidable strength, far surpassing their normal power. This resulted in them to stand out from the masses, and in key moments allow them to defeat powerful enemies and turn defeat into victory, achieving unexpected results. For example, when Saiyans invaded Earth in the original work, Son Goku and Piccolo's battle power was only around 300. However, facing against the threat of the Saiyan Raditz, they ignited their ki and increased battle power to more than 1000, and by firing a powerful Kamehameha and a special beam cannon, they finally defeated Raditz who had 1500 battle power. The ki ignition method was a unique skill that was gradually developed by martial artists of Earth because they faced natural threats all year round. In short, it was to rapidly ignite the ki that had been accumulated inside the body and use it to defeat enemies. Of course, the disadvantage to such a skill was that there would be a period of weakness after its usage. Xiaya did not expect to find an alien who could also use a similar skill on such a remote planet. Yet compared with Dragon Ball fighters' masterful use of ki, Bofiai's ability was still rather crude. He only had a surface understanding of the ki, but it was enough to vastly increase his fighting power and exhibit extraordinary strength. This was what Bofiai had been working on for over several hundred years, drawing on the fighting experience of the many civilizations from all over the universe. If he had not accumulated this experiences for many years, Bofiai would never have been able to do even this much. It also shows that Bofiai is not a simple person. Ha ha ha! What a refreshing feeling! I have not used my full strength in so many years, so today I will use your blood as a memento to this moment. Bofiai floated in the air, an arrogant expression adorning his face. At this moment, his whole body was covered in a layer of blood-colored aura, and the two blood-red agate eyes on his forehead were turning around, flashing with an icy cold light. Through this bout of fight, Bofiai had already figured out the strength of this small human before him. Although he was not willing to admit it, this human was really a troublesome opponent. At the very least, his battle power was on par with him. So it was not surprising to him that his two sons were not his match. However, even if his strength was on par with him, so what? A mere 700,000 battle power guy was no longer his match after he had opened his two eyes, which had increased his strength to 940,000. Apart from being confident, Bofiai was also somewhat pleased with himself. Fortunately he had created this ingenious skill. Otherwise, it is unlikely that he would have been able to deal with this opponent. Bofiai had fought numerous life and death battles throughout his life. He knew that he could not allow the tiger to return to the mountains, so today is destined to be the day this human dies. Note: letting an enemy go and risk causing him trouble later on. In the face of Bofiai's provocative words, Xiaya's complexion sank and fury rushed out from his chest. He more or less knows why Bofiai is so arrogant, so he inwardly sneered, "Really an arrogant guy, but it's not only you who can ignite his ki." Naturally, Xiaya could also ignite his ki. But similar to amassing ki, it would take some to prepare. In addition, if he did so, he would be igniting his ki in normal state. So he did not want to use this technique unless it was a last resort. But now that the situation had reached this point, if he did not ignite his ki, he wouldn't be Bofiai's opponent. If he want to take the Super Dragon Ball away, he must defeat Bofiai. After thinking about it, he reached a decision in his mind. Taking a deep breath, he shook his arms, releasing a loud shout. Like suddenly turning on some sort of switch, his whole body began to burn with a pale golden aura. Suddenly, a strong and frightening aura like that of a gigantic primeval beast exploded out. Boom! This surging aura, like a silver bottle bursting open, suddenly spread out in all directions. A pale gold radiance as if they are distorted streaks extended out to thousands of miles. The might radiating off of Bofiai's body, who had a smug expression on his face, was suddenly suppressed. Xi11Xi, the pale golden aura raged as the high amounts of energy condensed to form into bright white spots. These bright white spots represented Xiaya's strength after igniting his ki. Just like in the original work when Son Goku and Piccolo fought with Raditz, Xiaya's strength at the moment was far beyond his normal self. It has been magically enhanced to 910,000. How is this possible? This human was still holding back. Bofiai's smug expression instantly became stiff, his complexion turning black as carbon dye, as he coldly looked at Xiaya. Xiaya's strength was far beyond his expectations. He originally thought that only he had a ki ignition skill, but he did not expect this human to have it too. Other than the shock in his heart, Bofiai only had one thought: to kill his opponent. He must wipe his existence from the face of the world, at any cost. After coming to this conclusion, Bofiai no longer showed any hesitation. Releasing a loud roar, he swiftly dashed towards Xiaya, releasing powerful energy attacks from his palms along the way. Boom boom boom, the sounds of non-stop explosions echoed out in the desolate plain. In the observer's eyes, only two gold and red streaks could be vaguely seen flashing across the quiet plain like two slender ribbons. Facing Bofiai's strong and powerful attacks, Xiaya was naturally very careful, not daring to be careless. He sped up his body's movement speed, and once it reached its limit he utilized his ability. In any case, he was going all out to increase his speed as much as possible. Using his time ability, Xiaya's body lightly moved around as if he was dancing, quickly shifting from one spacious place to another. After several probing rounds of fight, Xiaya discovered that Bofiai's attacking power after ki ignition had become significantly more swift and violent. Each attack brought forth enough power to seize the heavens. It felt like he wanted to punch him to death in a single, powerful strike. His ki aura was not only crude, but also very overbearing. However, no matter how strong he is, it was useless. Xiaya sneered in his heart. At this time, a quiet and icy yet never-ending dark red light attacked. Boom! Bofiai swung his fist in a mighty blow. To which, Xiaya quickly responded by making a defensive gesture. Bang! Both of them were sent flying backwards hundreds of meters away from the impact. The force penetrated through Xiaya's chest. Utilizing his space-time skill, he was able to reflect energy equivalent to 30% of his strength, but the remaining energy still ran wildly through his body. Pu! Xiaya spurted out a mouthful of blood from his mouth as his body did dozens of backflips in the air, and landed on the ground. An incomparable force was immediately channeled into the ground, causing it to sink as if it had suffered from a heavy and tremendous force. In that instant his body's aura and the ground came in contact with each other. It caused an explosion of an unprecedented scale. After a loud rumbling, the large expanse of dust dispersed away and cracks began to spread out onto the ground. The ground suddenly split open. On the other side, Bofiai flew backwards several hundred meters after colliding with Xiaya. He quickly stopped himself in the air and watched the huge deep crater on the ground, his heart giving birth to a strong feeling of fear. His blood-red agate eyes on his forehead spun around before he emitted killing intent as he swooped down from the sky. Good, once more. Xiaya spat out another mouthful of blood. The stabbing pain coming from his chest caused his movements to slightly slow down. However, at this moment Bofiai's tall and sturdy figure suddenly shot down from the sky. Boy, receive my fist. Bofiai's icy voice sounded in his ear, and his iron fist smashed down with an unparalleled formidable might. So fast! This was Xiaya's first reaction. Immediately, loud rumbling sounds echoed throughout the heaven and the earth, and the ground sunk down by hundreds of meters. Yellow sand splashed everywhere and small rocks flew about. Various kinds of sands and rocks flew out in all directions like an artillery shell shooting out. With booming muffled sounds, the hard rocks were like tofu as they were shot through with deep holes. The entire planet shook violently. All the aliens watching from thousands of meters away were scared out of their wits. A slight chill rushed from their toes to the top of their heads, and their whole body was dominated by one emotion: fear. Chapter 148, The Expectant King Kai. When the thick smoke gradually dispersed, a huge crater that had a diameter of more than a kilometer revealed itself before everyone's eyes. Gazing at the boundless land that had been destroyed beyond recognition, everyone present shivered and felt a chill shrouding the very depths of their soul. Their throats dried up and they could not even speak a word for some time. At this moment, both brothers and the aliens, and lone travelers who were previously boasting about their strength were silent. Such an outcome was brought about by Sir Bofiai's frightening punch. This was a power at universe-level destruction. So powerful that it could cause the very depths of the soul to tremble. For a while, everyone's eyes became fervent. That human should have been annihilated by Sir Bofiai, right? Suddenly, questions began to break out among the spectators in the distance, and people began to talk in groups of 2 or 3 as soon as the silence was broken. He has to be dead. After taking such a frightening attack, even if he had a tough body he still wouldn't be able to withstand it. Someone replied with certainty. Sir Bofiai's attack was so powerful, there is no way he can survive. By placing themselves in the human's shoes, the shocking display of power still lingered in the depths of their heart, not dispersing for a long time. No one believes that under such a powerful attack, there would still be someone who could survive. Even the brothers believed without a doubt that the human was dead. At the center of the burnt yellow crater, the solid gravel had been heated so much due to the high temperature that it turned into a molten sticky substance. Everything was quiet as black smoke arose, blazing and barren. It looked incredibly barren and was filled with a deathly aura which was left after a volcano that had been accumulating for a long period of time had erupted. At this moment, Bofiai was floating above the ring-shaped crater while frowning. His 2 blue and 2 red eyes were fixedly staring below at the huge crater which was pitch dark like an abyss. Is that human really dead? Unlike the spectators' certainty, Bofiai himself felt rather uncertain. After all, that human was a super expert that was on a similar level as him. Such an attack should not be deadly enough to kill him. One can never be too careful. He cautiously gazed at the crater while on guard. What is going on? Why is Sir Bofiai still on guard? Someone noticed Bofiai's change and asked doubtfully. Could it be that the human is still not dead after taking on such an attack? A trembling voice asked. Suddenly, Bofiai trembled as he felt an aura from the depths of the ground. Sure enough, he could feel that human's aura still majestically burning and raging. The aura was like a bright light flashing in the darkness, stinging his eyes. That human was indeed not yet dead. His complexion changed, and his expression turned grave. This human's life force was really tenacious. On the outskirts of the battlefield, seeing that Bofiai was still in a fighting stance as if facing a great enemy, Boku and Bolton were extremely confused. However, almost immediately, they seemed to have discovered something, their countenance suddenly changing. How is this possible? The human's aura had not disappeared yet. Their lips trembled slightly in disbelief as they turned their heads and stared at one another. Both saw shock in the other's eyes. At this time, the gravel-filled ground suddenly buzzed and began to shake fiercely, as if something was trying to break out from the ground. Afterwards, flickering pale golden beams of light burst out from the ground, shooting up to thousands of meters in height. Simultaneously, a small black dot suddenly soared to the sky along with a beam of light. Like a black sword, it shot righteously towards Bofiai in midair. Come! Bofiai's pupils suddenly contracted. He crossed his arms and made a defensive posture, and burning hot aura erupted out of his body. It looked like a second sun had appeared in the sky. With a loud bang, the pale golden aura collided with the red aura. Instantly the entire sky was filled with color along with loud sounds. After the collision, both sides quickly separated, each occupying one half of the sky while staring at each other with apprehension. At the moment, Xiaya's whole body was bruised and cut a rather sorry figure. High in the sky, after passing through the thin atmosphere, little drops of bright red liquid could be seen trickling down. He painted quite a miserable appearance. Knowing his body's condition, Xiaya heaved a big sigh. He had no choice but to take out a senzu bean and swallow it down. Without it, it was unlikely for him to continue fighting. Immediately after eating the senzu bean, under its healing effect his flesh moved and his injuries stabilized. Then, he slowly descended to arrive at Bofiai's height. This human even has a regeneration ability. Seeing that Xiaya was unscathed as he descended, the crowd burst into exclamation. Because no one noticed Xiaya swallowing the senzu bean, its effect was therefore mistaken to be the fabled regeneration ability. Bofiai also did not saw it and thus was very shocked. Regeneration ability. This was something which countless aliens yearned for, and was unattainable even in their dreams. It was also publicly recognized as the most difficult ability to counter. Unexpectedly, this human had even mastered such a magical ability. At this moment, Bofiai was extremely envious, and his scarlet eyes began to release even more killing intent. However, deep in his heart, he was no longer confident in being able to defeat Xiaya. It is quite unexpected that you, a mere human, even has a regeneration ability. I'm becoming more and more curious about you, yet that only makes me more motivated to defeat you. Bofiai's gloomy voice echoed out as his two pairs of blue and crimson eyes spewed out terrifying murderous intent. He took a step forward, and instantly crossed the distance between the two, arriving before Xiaya. He grinned evilly and said, "I hope you can continue to be just as lucky after a while." Xiaya was silent as his dark eyes closely observed Bofiai's movements. He knew that Bofiai was actually a little nervous, which was simply perfect. The more nervous he was, the more likely he was to expose flaws in the fight. Whether the other party was bluffing or not, or if he had a card up his sleeves, Xiaya was totally unconcerned. Though to be honest, Bofiai's overwhelming violent attack just now had actually startled him, even causing him to fall into a crisis. If it weren't for the fact that he resolutely chose to evade by going underground at the critical juncture, he may not have died but he would have surely lost his ability to move. So when confronting Bofiai, Xiaya maintained an unprecedented vigilance. Huo, the pale golden aura began to burn once again. Because of his earlier injuries, the Saiyan's unique characteristic had been stimulated. Xiaya's ki compared to before he had ignited his ki was much stronger. This was obviously not good news for Bofiai. Seeing Xiaya's aura increasingly getting stronger as they fought, his cruel eyes protruded out. Full of disbelief, his whole face became distorted as he snarled. In the entire universe, there is no one who can defeat this uncle. After he spoke, an even more wild energy erupted out. This eruption was already a type of overdrafting. In an instant, a somber and desolate aura shrouded the entire planet, and everyone clearly felt that the surrounding temperature had dropped by several degrees, becoming icy and bone-piercing. The scene was especially solemn. Far away, on a higher plane, a dimension that was connected with the underworld, where golden clouds floated in the blue sky like a golden ocean, carefreely floating amidst the waves. The entire dimension was filled with a serene and unconstrained aura. In this place filled with auspicious clouds, there was a small planet. It wasn't too big, its entire diameter not being more than 5 kilometers. It was covered in lush green grass and blue-green flagstones were arranged in a disorderly manner to form a stone path, both sides of which had rows of lush bushes. It was the place where the great Kai lives. Kai's planet. At this moment, a light green-skinned petite figure wearing Kai's uniform was lying down on a hammock between two trees, leisurely sleeping. Suddenly, the two slender antennas on its forehead shook and caused its body to sway before its body fell down from the hammock. The green-skinned Kai quickly got up, and jogged towards the direction pointed by its antennas. Soon, it arrived at the place which represented the location of the Bofei Trading Center. The antennas shook once again, and a few tiny rays flashed out, and the antenna immediately received information on what was happening at the trading center. Upon going through the information of what was happening at Bofei Trading Center, King Kai was shocked and exclaimed, "Ah! Who is that human? He can actually fight someone of Bofei's level. Unbelievable, it's simply unbelievable." Kai continued to investigate and quickly learned the know-how of the entire situation. He could not help but feel elated. Although Bofei was not as evil as the frost demons, he was still one of the most evil person in all the starfields under his jurisdiction. As he was in charge of 1/4 of the Milky Way galaxy, he had to attend to numerous affairs, and had too many things to deal with. Cancerous areas like the Bofei Trading Center which were sprouting everywhere, he had long since wanted to get rid of them. But he was understaffed, which slowly led him to be unable to do what he wanted. If that human could help him destroy the Bofei Trading Center, it couldn't be much better. Hence, King Kai could not help but expectantly observe. Chapter 149, Huge Collision. On the other side, Xiaya and Bofei's fight was still going on and was reaching its climax. Xi11Xi, both golden and red beautiful auras flashed around in the sky. In almost an instant, Xiaya and Bofei had already clashed several times. A berserk aura swept out in all directions, gradually spreading out. One moment, the silhouette of two figures fighting would appear tens of thousands of meters in the sky, and another moment they would appear above the surging surface of a lake, yet only to find them suddenly dive down underground with a rumbling and deafening explosion. Such formidable power which could distort light and terrorize every living being was etched in the onlookers' minds, and would not disperse for a long period of time. In actuality, Bofei's battle power was much higher than Xiaya's. But because Xiaya had a much more refined mastery of key ignition and had the senzu beans as support which could restore his physical strength at critical times. At this moment, Xiaya was relying on a war of attrition to hold the upper hand. The fight had been going on for a while when suddenly Bofei beat his chest and stamped his foot and angrily roared. The large amount surging airflows around Bofei turned turbulent. The might pressing down around him suddenly increased and a frightening imposing aura swept out. The white expanse of dust looked as if a desert storm had appeared, sweeping outwards in all directions. As Bofei kept releasing energy, tiny rocks and gravel under the highly concentrated energy separated from the planet's gravity, slowly floating up. Netherworld shock wave. Suddenly, solemn yet magnificent bright red energy rippled outward, and a crushing pressure appeared like tigers roaring and apes howling. The energy density was on an entirely different level from before, much more solid and concentrated. The one to bear the brunt of such an attack was Xiaya. Facing such a powerful enormous shock wave, Xiaya revealed a shocked expression. Immediately, he took a step forward and threw out his arms to resist the incoming shock wave with all his might. Super Energy Ball. Spreading his fingers and bringing his hands forward, a light blue energy beam formed in his hand, and then he rose from the ground and shot it towards Bofei's powerful energy wave. Rumble, rumble. The bright white rays of light intersected and became increasingly brighter and larger. The two energies intertwined, causing the long and narrow area to begin to emit a translucent luster. The ground collapsed, and the soil underneath their feet was blown away. Pfff. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the immense might caused Xiaya to take a few steps backwards, his consciousness sluggish. He gasped for breath, and his complexion became deathly pale. The energy wave in his hand weakened, and in an instant the situation was reversed and he was in a disadvantageous position. Rumble. The bright red energy in Bofei's hand gained the upper hand, and as it grew increasingly stronger, like a primeval ferocious beast it directly pierced through with an irresistible force. The immense frightening force stirred up the air and a churning explosion as far as the eye could see appeared on the surface of the main star. It appeared as if it had collided with a huge planet coming from the depths of the universe. Xiaya was just like a small boat in a vast ocean, swaying under the stirring explosion's impact. With a loud rumbling sound, the enormous explosion shook the entire planet. Suddenly, there was chaos between sky and earth. It became difficult to differentiate where the sky was, and where the earth was. In this blurry and chaotic state, numerous energies flickered, turning the whole planet upside down. After a long period of time, the smoke gradually dispersed. At last, the view was restored. Getting a clear view of the surging lava-filled craters that dotted the battlefield, everyone was stunned and they sunk into a strange silence. It's finally over. Just now when the energy beams collided, I thought I was going to die. Some aliens who were lying on the ground stood up while wiping the cold sweat from their face and said with delight. Yeah, it was really frightening. Where did that human sprung out from? He was simply too formidable. Someone sighed with emotion and said. But, regardless of how powerful he was, wasn't he still finished off by Sir Bofiai? He really deserved to die. After the fierce fight, everyone began to exclaim at how powerful Sir Bofiai was and were glad that they could witness such a high-level fight with their own eyes. Naturally, there were also some aliens that had a stern look on their face while they hid their petty thoughts at the bottom of their hearts. What a pity, the human couldn't kill Bofiai. The brothers, Boku and Bolton, both revealed a happy expression on their face, and their hearts danced with joy. Only today, they had discovered that their father was so strong. After witnessing everything, their hearts were full of worship. Yet they were still somewhat regretful. That human was killed in such a simple manner, he truly got off too lightly. In their opinion, their father should have tortured the human for a while before killing him. At the center of the energy collision, a pitch-black rock stratum as if it had suffered from a high-energy particle beam bombardment appeared in its vicinity. Black pungent smoke rose. Bofiai carefully observed it for a while. He was confident that under such a strong bombardment, no one could have survived. The human should finally be dead. The agate eyes on his forehead rolled around for a while, and just as it was about to close, a strong sense of crisis suddenly flashed in his brain. Involuntarily, his entire body trembled and an icy bone-chilling feeling shrouded him. Not good. Bofiai let out a loud shout, and his deep blue pupils contracted while the scales all over his body became erect. Raising his head, he saw a tiny black shadow slowly descending from high in the sky. It was precisely this person who was giving him that sense of impending crisis. Unexpectedly, the human still hasn't died. Appearing high in the sky, the injury-riddled Xiaya had finished gathering his ki. At this time, his pitch-black eyes were filled with cold killing intent. He overlapped his thumb to thumb, and forefinger to forefinger, before extending both his injury-riddled arms to the front. Super Tri-Beam! Following his shout, a dark red energy beam shot down from the sky, directly aimed at Bofiai. Deep blue electric arcs twined around the beam of energy beam like an angry blue lightning dragon. With a loud roar comparable to dragons and tigers, a frightening imposing aura that contained a formidable, peerless, heaven-destroying and earth-shattering energy indomitably swooped down towards Bofiai. The world-shaking aura caused light to distort. Not good. Bofiai frantically let out a loud roar. He wanted to flee but the powerful tri-beam had already firmly locked onto him. His body was unable to move even an inch. Energy shock wave. At this point, he could only choose to resolutely withstand it. Within an instant, he mobilized all the energy within his body in preparation for attacking. Similar to Xiaya, he also produced a crimson energy beam and shot it out from his palm. Boom! The two clusters of energy collided with a loud bang, and immediately exploded, producing dazzling beams of intense light. The loud booming sound formed visible shockwaves which radiated outwards while the violent collision produced a mighty and violent storm. In an instant, another layer of soil on the land was flattened. The dark red and crimson energies mixed and devoured one another, producing scorching temperature. The energy produced at this moment was just like a bright glow that was produced when a planet was destroyed. No, it should be even more breathtaking in comparison. In the end, Xiaya's super tri-beam after he had ignited his ki was slightly stronger. It gradually began to take the upper hand and quickly devoured Bofiai's hastily shot out energy wave after which it rushed towards Bofiai. Indeed, what goes around comes around. Nu! Amidst his intense and unwilling cry, Bofiai was swallowed by the dense energy wave. On the horizon, a second sun suddenly rose and contended for brightness with the original blazing sun in the sky, stinging everyone's eyes. The trembling gradually subsided. Everyone opened their eyes and seeing the scene in front of them couldn't help but cause them to turn sluggish. Within a 50-kilometer radius, everything had been changed beyond recognition. All the mountains protruding out on the field had completely disappeared, transforming into a clearly visible yellow flatland as scorching heat emitted out of the surface of the ground. Chapter 150, Body Transformation? It was just too sudden, the fight's situation had reversed so quickly that all the spectators sunk into an inconceivable and frightening silence. How is this possible? How can father lose to a human? Boku couldn't believe it and roared out, his eyes listless. He was stunned by the abrupt unexpected change. Bofiai clearly had the upper hand, yet how was he instantly swallowed up by that energy? The rapid changes on the battlefield was too much for his mind to process. Bolton was also standing dazedly, his throat wriggling as he tried to swallow a mouthful of saliva, but he discovered that his throat was dry. He spoke in an unusually hoarse voice. It can't be, how could father possibly be defeated? Yet that 50 kilometer of desolate land was a clear sign that the fight was over. The invincible father in their hearts had already been defeated in the hands of an unknown human. Their countenance turned ugly. What were they going to do after losing their father's protection? There is no need to even talk about keeping the Bofiai Trading Center, as even leaving from here alive was uncertain. The powerful human that even their father could not defeat would likely not let them off. Coming to this conclusion, both brothers involuntarily took a few steps back, feeling pressured in their hearts, preparing to escape at any moment. Kai's planet. The green-skinned King Kai was gazing at the Bofiai Trading Center with a solemn look on his face. He had no trace of joy on his face after Bofiai perished. That Bofiai should have died under the energy bombardment, but why do I still have this ominous feeling? The antennas on his head flickered with electricity, as he observed with an intense gaze. Logically, Bofiai could have survived under such highly concentrated energy bombardment. But why was he still feeling uneasy? King Kai was puzzled. It felt like he was overlooking something. All of a sudden, he sensed an icy key amidst the diverse and chaotic auras in the Bofiai Trading Center. Wait, it's Bofiai's key. He is still alive. King Kai shouted aloud. Bofiai's key had still not disappeared. Hey! As he waited for the remnant energy in the air to disperse, Xiaya's scarred body was gasping for breath. Suddenly, he exclaimed in surprise, seemingly having discovered something. Unexpectedly, this Bofiai turned out to be so tenacious. He was still alive even after getting bombarded by an attack of that level. As soon as this though flashed through his mind, the ground violently trembled and a dark red silhouette drilled out of the ground like an arrow. Bofiai roared with fury, his eyes bulging. Right now, his appearance was incredibly miserable. The dark red scales on his body were no longer shiny and beautiful. 2 of the brown horns on his head had been snapped off, leaving only one behind, and both his arms had ripped skin and blood oozing out, while some places had already turned scorched black. Damn it, I want to chop your body into pieces and use your blood to wash this humiliation. Bofiai almost tore his lungs out as he crazily roared. At the moment when he was drowned by Xiaya's shock wave, he, the Grand Master of the Bofiai Trading Center, felt the sense of death, and an emotion called fear flashed through his mind. At that moment he, Bofiai, was afraid. Thinking of this, his face turned hot. This was a humiliation, and it must be washed clean with blood. And the human who did this must pay with his life. This absolutely cannot be forgiven. Bofiai roared and his aura began to surge like mad. Now that it had come to this, he could only use his final trick. Ordinarily, he would never dare to use this trick because the price was too big, but the current him was already close to being crazy, so he paid it no heed. As long as he could kill this human, he was willing to pay any price. Human! I underestimated you before. Who could have thought that among the weak humans there would actually be an expert like you? But now, you will not be getting another chance. Bofiai's gloomy voice was filled with resentment. I would rather not to use this ability, because it would greatly shorten my lifespan. But to kill you, I would gladly do it. Bofiai had turned crazy. Ha ha ha, so father is just fine. Now, that human is bound to suffer. Seeing that their father was not dead, both brothers who were watching the fight from the distance felt reassured. The restlessness in their hearts suddenly settled down and they energetically waved around their clenched fists. That's right, father wouldn't lose. Bolton bit his teeth. He was surprised to discover he had never been as relieved as he was now. This guy is really not easy to kill. What sort of trick are you going to again show now? Xiaya's eyes slightly revolved around. Whether or not Bofiai was bluffing, he stepped forward and turned into a beam of light which immediately arrived in front of Bofiai before launching a fierce attack. Although he didn't know what Bofiai was going to do next, he knew that he could not allow him to gain the initiative. Rumble! A large amount of light rays fell from the sky and numerous disorderly energy waves began to surge on the battlefield. A berserk energy swept across the ground, again digging long 3 feet deep trenches into the dirt below. Voila! Bofiai swung his arms and a large ball of scarlet energy flew out like a blooming flower, tender and beautiful. But after a short period of time, it blossomed into a vicious flower of death. Ha ha ha, human! Today, I will let you experience Sir Bofiai's body transformation ability. Bofiai howled, the surging energy firmly wrapping around him before it unexpectedly turned into an energy cocoon. Body transformation. Xiaya was shocked. Could it be that Bofiai could still increase his battle power like Frieza? If this was true, it would be better for him to just give up on the Super Dragon Ball and escape. There are many races in the universe who could transform in order to increase their battle power. This was a good or bad method in which the life forms in the universe had undergone evolution. Just like that Zarbon he had fought before, he could significantly increase his battle power after body transformation. There was also the Saiyan's Great Ape body transformation. Although it has a large number of limitations, and easily causes people to lose their rationality, it was indeed a good method to increase battle power. However, the Great Ape body transformation was only suitable for low-level Saiyans. After achieving over 100,000 battle power, the increase in strength after transforming into the Great Ape was negligible. In short, the aliens who have body transformation ability were extremely troublesome once they transforms. I absolutely cannot let him transform. Immediately making his decision, Xiaya wildly launched even more attacks toward the energy cocoon. A huge mighty wave of energy traversed across the sky. Immediately, it seems to have tore through the restrictions of space and time. The berserk energy made the heavens and earth constantly change colors. Fierce winds whistled and lightning traveled back and forth within the dark clouds. It was as if an entire bottle of ink was poured in the huge whirlwind in the dark and gloomy sky. It would fall apart and collapse at any moment. The pressure began to drop and coupled with the harsh weather, made the battlefield look even more bleak as if an apocalypse was coming. Rumble. A cold and dark aura suddenly rose from the cocoon. It was a frightening energy that makes one's soul tremble. For a while, the whole planet began to shake even more violently.